My mother has the exact same tattoo. 5 words. That's all it took to shatter a billionaire's carefully constructed world. Grant Holloway, Wall Street titan, corporate legend, a man who'd built empires from ashes, stood frozen in the middle of Manhattan's most exclusive gala, staring at a black waitress whose hands trembled as she balanced a tray of champagne. Around them, the elite laughed and clinked crystal glasses worth more than most people's monthly rent. But in that moment, surrounded by hundreds of New York's most powerful, Grant Holloway heard nothing but the roar of blood in his ears and the echo of a name he'd buried 25 years ago. The waitress, Nia Monroe, watched his face drain of color, watched recognition bloom into horror, and knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same. Before you find out what happens next, I'm inviting you to follow this story all the way to the end, and please comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The Metropolitan Arts Foundation Gala occupied 3 floors of the Rothschild Hotel, a testament to excess disguised as charity. Waitstaff in crisp black uniforms circulated through rooms where a single centerpiece cost more than Nia Monroe made in a month. She'd learned to move invisibly through these spaces, to become part of the architecture, present but unseen, necessary but unremarkable. Table 14 needs a refresh, Marcus whispered as he passed, his own tray loaded with hors d'oeuvres that most of these people would photograph but never eat. And watch yourself around the blonde in Versace. She snaps her fingers. Nia nodded, adjusting her grip on the champagne flutes. Her feet ached in the required black heels, and the fluorescent lights of the service corridor made her eyes burn after 6 consecutive hours of smiling at people who looked through her like glass. But she needed this shift. She needed every shift. The medical bills didn't care about aching feet or bruised dignity. The ballroom sparkled with calculated opulence. Chandeliers dripped crystal tears over tables draped in ivory silk. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable in the corner, while Manhattan's elite performed their annual ritual of tax-deductible generosity. Nia had worked enough of these events to recognize the pattern. Bid on art you'll never hang, donate to causes you'll never think about again, then return to your penthouse feeling philanthropic until next year. She approached table 14 with practiced efficiency, her smile automatic and empty. The guests barely acknowledged her presence as she replaced empty glasses with full ones, invisible hands serving visible wealth. That's when she saw him. Grant Holloway sat at table 1, naturally. The man didn't do second-tier placement. Even seated, he commanded the space around him with the casual authority of someone who'd spent decades bending rooms to his will. Mid-50s, sharp-featured, with silver threading through dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than Nia's entire wardrobe. His tuxedo fit like it had been assembled directly on his body by nervous tailors with trembling hands. Nia had seen his face before. Forbes covers, Bloomberg interviews, that viral clip where he'd eviscerated a journalist who'd asked about his charitable giving. "I don't apologize for success," he'd said, voice cold as January wind. "I create jobs. That's my charity." The internet had loved him and hated him in equal measure, which seemed to be exactly how he preferred it. She wouldn't have approached him at all if Marcus hadn't caught her eye from across the room, gesturing urgently toward table 1. Their silent language was clear. "They need service. You're closer. Go." Nia inhaled slowly, centering herself the way her mother had taught her. "Baby, you're worth just as much as any of them. Remember that." And started toward the billionaire's table. She was 3 feet away when she saw his wrist. Grant Holloway had reached for his water glass, and the movement pulled his cuff back just enough to reveal the tattoo. Small, delicate, positioned on the inside of his left wrist, where most people wouldn't notice it. But Nia noticed. She noticed because she'd seen that exact tattoo 1,000 times before, etched into skin she'd kissed goodnight since childhood. 2 intertwined hearts, a date beneath them, June 7th, 1999. And below that, a single name in elegant script, Iris. The tray tilted in Nia's hands. Champagne sloshed against crystal but didn't spill. Years of service work had trained her body to compensate even when her mind went blank. She stood there frozen, while her heart hammered against her ribs and the world narrowed to that small patch of inked skin. It couldn't be. Couldn't possibly be. But there it was, identical in every detail to the tattoo her mother had gotten 26 years ago, the one she'd refused to explain beyond vague mentions of someone I used to know and a different life. "Excuse me." Grant Holloway's voice cut through her paralysis, sharp with impatience. "Are you serving or decorating?" His companions laughed, the kind of polite, automatic laughter that greased the wheels of power. Nia blinked, forced her hand steady, and began distributing glasses around the table. Her movements were mechanical, autopilot taking over while her mind spun. She should walk away, finish her shift, go home to her mother's cramped apartment in Queens and forget she'd ever seen that tattoo. What were the odds, really? Tattoos got repeated, designs got copied. June 7th was probably someone's birthday or anniversary, common enough that... Is something wrong? Grant was looking at her now, actually looking. His attention finally pulled from whatever deal he'd been discussing with the silver-haired man to his right. His eyes were dark, analytical, taking in her face with the focus of someone accustomed to reading people for profit. Nia opened her mouth, closed it. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to retreat, to remember her place in rooms like these. She thought of her mother, lying in their apartment with the television playing softly to mask the sound of her labored breathing. Thought of the stack of medical bills on the kitchen counter, the collection notices, the impossible math of survival. Thought of 25 years of questions her mother had deflected with smiles and subject changes. "Your tattoo," Nia heard herself say, the words escaping before caution could stop them. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "My mother has the exact same one." The table went quiet, not gradually. The silence arrived all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. Grant's companions stopped mid-conversation, their faces reflecting various shades of confusion and intrigue. But Nia saw none of them. She only saw Grant Holloway's expression transform, watch color drain from his face like someone had opened a valve. "What did you say?" His voice had changed completely, gone from imperious to hollow in the space of a heartbeat. Nia's throat constricted, but she'd already jumped. Might as well fall all the way. "The tattoo on your wrist, 2 hearts, a date, and the name Iris. My mother has the same one. Same design, same date, same name, everything identical." Grant stood so abruptly his chair scraped against marble, the sound jagged and wrong in the refined space. He grabbed her wrist, not roughly but with desperate urgency, and pulled his cuff back completely, exposing the tattoo to the chandelier light. "Where did she get it?" The question came out ragged. "Your mother. Where? When?" I don't know the where." Nia's heart was racing now, adrenaline flooding her system. "But the date on the tattoo, June 7th, 1999, that's when she got it. She told me once, years ago, said it marked something important." Grant's grip on her wrist tightened, then released like he'd been burned. He took a step back, nearly stumbling, and the billionaire who'd walked with unshakable confidence moments ago looked suddenly unsteady. His companions were standing now too, concerned voices asking if he was all right, if he needed anything, but he waved them off with a distracted hand. "Your mother's name." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Tell me her name." Nia glanced around the ballroom. Dozens of faces had turned their direction now, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood. She saw Marcus near the kitchen entrance, his expression alarmed. Saw the event coordinator starting toward them, her professional smile strained. This was about to become a scene, the kind that got waitresses fired and banned from working future events. But her mother's face floated in her mind, exhausted, drawn, pretending the pain wasn't getting worse while they both knew it was. And Nia found she didn't care about the scene, about the job, about any of it. "Iris Monroe," she said clearly. "My mother's name is Iris Monroe." Grant Holloway made a sound that wasn't quite a word, something caught between recognition and grief. His hand went to his chest like he was checking for a heartbeat, making sure his body was still functioning even though his expression suggested his mind had departed entirely. "That's not possible." He shook his head slowly, denial fighting reality. "Iris Monroe died. The baby, she lost the baby. 25 years ago, she—" "I'm 25," Nia interrupted, and watched the final piece click into place behind his eyes. The ballroom had gone from curious to riveted. Conversations died throughout the space as people recognized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Grant Holloway, Manhattan's most unshakable power broker, coming apart in public. "You can't be." But his voice held no conviction now, only desperate hope struggling against mathematical certainty. "She told me she lost the baby. Miscarriage at 12 weeks. She was devastated. We both were. And then she vanished, changed her number, moved, disappeared completely. I looked for her, spent months, hired investigators, but it was like she'd never existed." Nia's world tilted. The champagne tray slipped from her fingers and hit the floor in an explosion of glass and alcohol that made the string quartet stutter to a halt. She barely noticed. Her ears were ringing, her mother's voice echoing through memories. "Your father died before you were born, baby. A car accident. He never got to meet you, but he would have loved you so much." "She lied to you," Nia whispered, the truth assembling itself like broken glass, forming a terrible picture. "She told you the baby died, and she disappeared. And she told you I was dead." Grant's voice was hollow, scraped clean of everything except raw comprehension. A car accident, probably. Or disease. Something quick and tragic that ended questions before they started. They stared at each other across 3 feet of marble floor and 25 years of constructed fiction. Around them, the gala had transformed into theater, an audience of hundreds watching 2 strangers realize they were father and daughter, while crystal shards glittered between their feet like the remains of 2 carefully shattered lies. The event coordinator arrived with security, her professional composure barely masking panic. "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to—" She stays. Grant's command cracked through the air with enough force to stop the security guards mid-step. Everyone else can leave, but she stays. "Mr. Holloway, I don't care what you think." He turned to face the coordinator, and Nia saw the full force of the power that had built empires. "Clear the room, now. Everyone out except her." "Sir, this is a charity gala. We have 200 guests who've paid. I'll cover it." Grant pulled out his phone, fingers moving with mechanical precision. "Every ticket, every donation, every expense, I'll double it, triple it. But clear this room immediately, or I'll make sure the Metropolitan Arts Foundation never gets another dollar from anyone in this city." The coordinator's face went through several rapid transformations before settling on grim acceptance. She knew a threat that wasn't empty when she heard one. Within minutes, controlled chaos erupted as staff began ushering confused, outraged guests toward the exits. Millionaires and socialites filed past, their faces twisted with indignation and fascination in equal measure. Nia caught Marcus's eye as he was herded toward the kitchen. His expression said, "What the hell did you do?" But she had no answer to give him. 10 minutes later, the ballroom stood empty except for Nia and Grant, separated by champagne-soaked marble and a chasm of lost time. The chandeliers still glittered overhead, indifferent to the human wreckage below. Somewhere, the string quartet's abandoned instruments sat in the corner, a half-finished concerto left incomplete. Grant moved first, crossing the distance between them with careful steps, like approaching something fragile that might shatter. Up close, Nia could see the lines around his eyes, the silver in his hair, the weight of years and decisions etched into a face that photographs made look impervious. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. "Please. I need to know everything." So Nia talked. She talked about growing up in a cramped apartment in Queens with a mother who worked 2 jobs and still smiled like the world was full of possibility. About Iris Monroe, who'd raised her daughter alone, who'd stretched every dollar until it screamed, who'd made magic out of poverty and love out of exhaustion. About bedtime stories and birthday cakes made from scratch. About a childhood that was materially poor but emotionally rich. About a mother who'd given everything and asked for nothing except that Nia be happy and safe and loved. She talked about the lies, too. The car accident that never happened. The father who was described in such vague, gentle terms that Nia had learned early not to push for details that clearly brought pain. She talked about accepting the story because questioning it seemed cruel, because her mother had already sacrificed so much, because sometimes love meant letting people keep their secrets. And she talked about the diagnosis. Stage 3, aggressive, the kind of cancer that didn't ask permission or show mercy. about insurance that barely covered anything, about bills that multiplied like malignant cells, about the terrible mathematics of American healthcare, where treatment existed but accessing it required resources they'd never had. Grant listened without interrupting, his face a mask that occasionally cracked to reveal something raw underneath. When she finished, silence settled over them like dust. "How long?" he asked finally. "The cancer. How long does she have?" "Without treatment, 6 months, maybe less. With treatment, if we could afford it, maybe years. They caught it early enough that it's not hopeless, but late enough that it's expensive, and we don't have expensive." Grant pulled out his phone again, made a call. Someone answered immediately, the kind of instant response that came from knowing the caller's net worth. "David, yes, I know what time it is. I need the best oncologist in New York." "No, not available next week. Available tomorrow. First thing. I don't care if they're booked. Offer whatever it takes." He paused, listening. "Memorial Sloan Kettering, the director." "Yes, that one. Tell them Grant Holloway needs a personal favor and I'll owe them one. They'll understand what that means." He ended the call and looked at Nia with an expression that might have been determination or might have been desperation. "Give me your mother's information, address, phone number, medical records if you have them. I'll have transportation arranged for tomorrow morning. I can't afford—" "You're not paying for anything." His voice was firm, allowing no argument. "I'll handle everything. Specialists, treatment, medications, everything. And before you refuse on principle or pride, understand that this isn't charity. This is—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I lost 25 years. I lost your childhood, your first day of school, your graduation, every moment that should have been mine. I can't buy those back. But I can buy time now. That's all I'm offering. Time." Nia wanted to argue, wanted to resist on principle, wanted to protect the pride that was sometimes the only thing poverty left intact. But she thought of her mother, thought of 6 months versus years, thought of the difference between dying and living. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Grant nodded once, sharp and decisive, then looked around the empty ballroom like he was seeing it for the first time. "I should have been there," he said quietly. "When you were born. Your first birthday. Every birthday. I should have been there. You didn't know I existed. Because she didn't tell me. Because she lied to both of us." For the first time, anger entered his voice. Not hot, but cold and controlled, the kind that could last for years. Why would she do that? Why would she tell me our child died and then disappear? What could possibly justify that? Nia had been asking herself the same question since the moment the truth emerged. "I don't know. But I think we need to ask her." "Tonight," Grant said immediately. "I want to see her tonight. She's sleeping by now, and she's weak. The cancer—" "I don't care." The words came out harder than he probably intended, and he took a breath, visibly controlling himself. "I'm sorry, but I've waited 25 years for answers I didn't even know I needed. I can't wait another day. Please." The please broke her. This man who commanded boardrooms and terrified competitors, who just emptied a ballroom with a threat and secured medical care with a phone call, was asking, begging, for permission to meet the woman who'd erased him from his own daughter's life. "Tomorrow morning," Nia compromised, "give her tonight. Let her sleep. And let me prepare her, because walking in without warning might literally stop her heart, and I'd rather the medical team you're hiring got a chance to work first." Grant looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded. "Tomorrow morning. First thing. And Nia—" He said her name like he was testing it, learning its shape. "Don't tell her I know. Not yet. I want to see her face when she realizes what's happened. I want to see her understand that the past she buried just climbed out of the grave." There was something dangerous in his voice, something that reminded Nia this man hadn't built an empire through kindness. But she understood the anger, felt her own version of it burning alongside the love. Her mother had lied. Had stolen 25 years from both of them. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever explanations emerged, that fact remained solid and unforgivable. "I'll text you the address," she said. Grant handed her a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, the kind of card that opened doors and ended arguments. His personal cell number was handwritten on the back. Call if anything changes, anything at all, and Nia, he paused, seeming to wrestle with words that didn't come easily. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know if I can be one, but I want to try. If you'll let me. She looked at this stranger who was somehow her father, at the tattoo on his wrist that matched the one on her mother's arm, at the grief and rage and desperate hope warring in his expression. Tomorrow would bring confrontations and truths and probably tears. Tomorrow her mother would have to answer for 25 years of carefully constructed lies. Tomorrow everything would change in ways Nia couldn't predict or control. We'll figure it out, she said, because what else was there to say? Grant nodded, then did something unexpected. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently squeezed her shoulder. The gesture was awkward, uncertain, nothing like the confident handshakes he probably distributed at business meetings. But it was human, vulnerable, a small bridge across an enormous divide. Then he left, walking across the empty ballroom toward the exit with his phone already at his ear, making arrangements, moving pieces, doing what powerful men did when confronted with problems that required solving. Nia watched him go, then looked down at the champagne and broken glass at her feet, at the evidence of the moment her life had split into before and after. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the car service her mother could barely afford, because taking the subway home suddenly felt impossible. While she waited, she picked up the business card Grant had given her and studied the name embossed in elegant letters. Grant Holloway, CEO, Holloway Capital Group. Her father was a billionaire, the man who'd funded campaigns and influenced markets, who'd been profiled in magazines and interviewed on financial networks, who existed in a world so far removed from her own they might as well have lived on different planets. That man was her father. And tomorrow, he was coming to their apartment in Queens to confront the woman who'd convinced them both he was dead. Nia closed her eyes and tried to imagine how that conversation would go. Tried to prepare for her mother's face when Grant Holloway walked through the door. Tried to reconcile the parent who'd loved her unconditionally with the person who'd committed such a comprehensive deception. But mostly, she thought about the tattoo. Two intertwined hearts that had survived 25 years separated, that had marked the same moment on two different bodies, that had finally, impossibly, been reunited in a ballroom full of broken champagne flutes and shattered lies. The car arrived. Nia gave the driver her address and settled into the back seat, watching Manhattan's glittering skyline pass by the window. Somewhere in one of those towers, Grant Holloway was probably still making calls, arranging treatments, deploying resources with the efficiency of someone accustomed to bending reality to his will. And in a cramped apartment in Queens, Iris Monroe slept, unaware that tomorrow her carefully guarded past would arrive at her door with questions she'd spent 25 years avoiding. Nia pulled out her phone and opened a new text to the number on Grant's card. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she typed, "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. She'll be awake by then. Be gentle. Please." The response came almost immediately. "I'll try." Not a promise, just an acknowledgement that gentleness might not be possible when confronting a betrayal this profound. Nia understood. She felt her own anger building beneath the shock, a slow-burning fury at having been denied a father, at having grown up believing a lie, at 25 years of birthday wishes blown out for a ghost. But beneath the anger lived something else, something that had taken root the moment she'd seen Grant's face transform from irritation to devastation. Recognition. Not just of their shared blood, but of a specific kind of loss. The kind that came from being told someone you loved had died when really they'd just been hidden. They were both victims of the same lie. Grant had lost a daughter. Nia had lost a father. And Iris Monroe, who'd somehow thought erasing them from each other's lives was an acceptable solution to whatever problem she'd faced, would have to answer for it tomorrow. The car pulled up to her building, 6 stories of weathered brick, iron fire escapes creating geometric shadows against the facade. The kind of place people lived when they were working their way up or had already fallen down. Nia paid the driver with money she couldn't spare, then climbed the stairs to the 4th floor where her mother slept. She opened the apartment door quietly, moving through the familiar space in darkness. Small living room, kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, 1 bathroom with tiles that hadn't been updated since the Reagan administration. The walls were covered with photographs, Nia's school pictures, certificates from community college, the associate's degree she'd earned before dropping out to care for her mother full-time. In every photograph, she smiled. In every one, Iris beamed beside her, looking proud and tired and utterly devoted. A visual record of a childhood built on love and lies in exactly equal measure. Nia stopped at her mother's bedroom door, listening to the labored breathing inside. The cancer was winning, had been winning for months. Even with treatment, the outcome was uncertain. But without it, without the resources Grant Holloway could provide, the ending was inevitable and close. She thought about walking in, about waking her mother and demanding answers immediately, about not waiting for tomorrow's confrontation, about seizing the truth while anger made her brave enough to push. But Iris looked so small under the faded blankets, so diminished by disease, and Nia found she couldn't do it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow they'd all face the truth together. Tomorrow her mother would have to explain the unexplainable. Tomorrow a billionaire would meet the woman who'd erased him, and Nia would watch two people she loved, one by history, one by choice, collide. But tonight, she let her mother sleep. Nia changed out of her work uniform and lay on her own bed, staring at the ceiling while her mind churned. She thought about Grant's face when he'd realized, about the tattoo that had survived decades, about the moment a champagne tray had slipped from her fingers and her entire life had shattered alongside it. She thought about what it meant to have a father, not the abstract concept she'd built from other people's experiences and television shows, but a real person with opinions and flaws and resources that could literally save her mother's life. A person who existed in penthouses and boardrooms, who moved through the world with confidence she couldn't imagine possessing, who was as foreign to her existence as she probably was to his. Could they build something real from this wreckage? Or would the truth that had brought them together also ensure they remained fundamentally separated by 25 years of absence and utterly different worlds? Nia didn't know, couldn't know. But lying in the darkness of her childhood bedroom, listening to her mother's labored breathing through the thin walls, she felt something unexpected blooming alongside the anger and shock and fear. Hope, fragile and frightening, but present nonetheless. Hope that maybe, impossibly, something good could emerge from tonight's disaster. That maybe the tattoo had survived for a reason. That maybe, after 25 years of believing her father was dead, having him suddenly alive was a miracle worth the pain of discovering how he'd been lost. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Grant's number. "I've arranged for a medical team to meet us at your apartment tomorrow at 10 a.m. They'll do an initial assessment there, then transport your mother to Memorial Sloan Kettering for comprehensive evaluation. The guest suite at my residence is available if either of you need a place to stay during treatment. No strings, just an offer." Nia stared at the words, at the casual mention of guest suite and my residence, at the way resources she'd never dreamed of accessing were suddenly being deployed with a few text messages. This was what having a billionaire father meant. Not just emotional support or family dinners, but the ability to reshape reality with money and influence. She typed back, "Thank you. We'll be ready." Then she added, before caution could stop her, "I'm glad I found you. Even like this, even with everything, I'm glad." The response took longer this time. Nia almost thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, "So am I. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be difficult." An understatement so profound it was almost funny. Tomorrow would be devastating, confrontational, possibly destructive. Tomorrow would crack open 25 years of lies and force everyone to look at what spilled out. Tomorrow would change everything, again, in ways none of them could fully predict. But tomorrow could wait, could. Tonight, Nia Monroe lay in the darkness and tried to process the impossible truth that she had a father, that he was alive, that he'd spent 25 years mourning a death that never happened while she'd spent the same years mourning a loss that had been carefully constructed fiction. Tomorrow, they'd face Iris Monroe together and demand the truth she'd guarded for a quarter century. Tomorrow, the lies would finally end. Tonight, Nia fell asleep with her hand pressed against her chest, feeling her heartbeat, thinking about intertwined hearts tattooed on two people's wrists, wondering what kind of love could inspire such a permanent mark, and what kind of fear could drive someone to betray it so completely. In Manhattan, Grant Holloway sat in his penthouse office, ignoring the urgent emails and missed calls, staring at the tattoo on his wrist. 2 hearts, a date, a name. He'd gotten it the day Iris told him she was pregnant, young and stupid, and convinced they'd found forever. 25 years later, Forever had walked up to him in a ballroom and called him father. He thought about tomorrow, about seeing Iris's face again after so long, about the questions that had haunted him for decades finally getting their answers. He thought about the daughter he'd just met, about the childhood he'd missed, about whether any amount of money or time could bridge the chasm between who they were and who they might have been if Iris had told the truth. But mostly, he thought about the lie. The comprehensive, devastating, world-altering lie that had stolen 25 years from him and given them to a woman who'd decided, for reasons he still couldn't fathom, that erasing him was preferable to including him. Tomorrow, Iris Monroe would explain herself, and Grant would decide whether any explanation could possibly be enough. He picked up his phone and made one more call to his attorney. James, I need you to put together documentation for a trust fund. Large, very large. Beneficiary is Nia Monroe, 25, currently residing in Queens. Yes, tonight. I don't care about the hour. Make it happen. Because whatever else was true, whatever anger he felt toward Iris, Nia was his daughter. And his daughter shouldn't be working double shifts to afford her dying mother's medical care. His daughter shouldn't know the weight of impossible bills and deferred dreams. His daughter deserved every opportunity he could provide, every resource he could deploy, every door he could open. He couldn't give her back the 25 years they'd lost, but he could make damn sure the future looked nothing like the past. Grant ended the call and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, his city, his kingdom, the empire he'd built from nothing through sheer will and calculated risk. For 25 years, he'd poured himself into this, into deals and acquisitions, into wealth accumulation and power consolidation, into becoming the kind of man people feared and respected in equal measure. And he'd done it all while mourning a child who'd never died, and a woman who'd simply disappeared. The rage came then, finally, erupting through the shock and grief like lava through fractured stone. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass and let himself feel it, the fury at being robbed, at having 25 years stolen, at missing his daughter's entire childhood because Iris Monroe had decided her fear was more important than his right to know he was a father. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she'd answer for it. Tomorrow he'd look into the eyes of the woman he'd loved and demand to know why his love hadn't been enough, why their child hadn't been enough, why nothing had been enough to keep her from committing such a profound betrayal. But tonight, Grant Holloway stood alone in his penthouse and mourned everything that had been taken from him, everything he'd never get back, every moment with Nia that existed now only as absence and loss. Tomorrow, the truth. Tomorrow, the reckoning. Tonight, a father and daughter slept in different boroughs of the same city, separated by miles and decades and lies, both dreaming of intertwined hearts that had somehow, impossibly, found their way back together. And in Queens, Iris Monroe slept too, unaware that her carefully guarded secret was about to walk through her door and demand the one thing she'd spent 25 years refusing to give: the truth. Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Nia woke at 6 to the sound of her mother coughing in the next room, a wet, rattling sound that had become the soundtrack of their lives over the past months. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to find the words that would prepare Iris for what was about to happen. But how did you tell your dying mother that the man she'd convinced you was dead would be walking through the door in 3 hours? She got up and moved through the apartment quietly, making coffee in the ancient percolator that had been her grandmother's, the one piece of family history Iris had kept from a past she otherwise refused to discuss. The smell filled the small kitchen, familiar and grounding, while Nia's mind raced through possible approaches. Each one felt inadequate, too blunt or too gentle, incapable of bridging the gap between their current reality and the truth about to explode it. "You're up early." Iris's voice came from the bedroom doorway, raspy and weak, but still carrying that note of maternal concern that transcended her own suffering. "Did you work late? I tried to wait up, but—" "Mom." Nia turned from the coffee maker, the word coming out sharper than intended. "We need to talk." Iris shuffled into the kitchen, her body a shadow of what it had been even 6 months ago. The cancer had carved her down to essentials, stripping away weight and strength until she looked almost translucent in the morning light filtering through their one window. She wore the faded pink robe Nia had given her 5 Christmases ago, the one that was more patches than original fabric now, but that Iris refused to replace. That sounds ominous, like... Iris tried for lightness, but her eyes were already worried, already searching Nia's face for clues about what fresh disaster had arrived. Did you get fired? Because, baby, we'll figure it out. I met someone last night. Nia poured 2 cups of coffee, her hands surprisingly steady considering the earthquake building in her chest. At the gala, someone with a tattoo. She watched her mother's face, saw the moment confusion began its shift toward comprehension. Iris's hand went automatically to her left wrist, covering the tattoo she'd worn for 26 years, the one she'd deflected questions about with practiced vagueness whenever Nia had asked. A lot of people have tattoos, baby. But Iris's voice had changed, gone careful and thin. Not like this one. Nia set the coffee cups on their small table and pulled out her phone, showing her mother the photo she'd managed to take while Grant was making calls. A close-up of his wrist that captured every detail. 2 intertwined hearts, June 7th, 1999. And the name Iris. Identical to yours in every single way. The coffee cup slipped from Iris's hand, hitting the linoleum and shattering into pieces that seemed too numerous for one mug to contain. Brown liquid spread across the floor like spilled truth, unstoppable and staining. But neither of them moved to clean it. They stood frozen, mother and daughter, separated by 3 feet of kitchen floor and 25 years of comprehensive deception. Oh, God! Iris's legs gave out, and she grabbed the counter for support, her breathing going rapid and shallow. Oh, God, no, not like this, not now, I can't. His name is Grant Holloway. Nia's voice came out cold, unfamiliar to her own ears. He told me you had a miscarriage. He told me you disappeared 25 years ago after losing the baby. He spent decades thinking I died, Mom. Decades. You don't understand. Iris was crying now, tears streaming down her hollowed cheeks. You can't possibly understand what it was like, how scared I was, how impossible everything seemed. Then explain it. The words cracked like a whip. Explain how you looked at a man mourning his dead child and didn't tell him I was alive. Explain how you let me grow up believing my father died in a car accident. Explain how any of this was okay. Iris opened her mouth, but only a sob came out, raw and broken. She slid down the cabinet to sit on the floor among the coffee and shattered ceramic, her thin body shaking with the force of her crying. Nia watched, feeling her anger war with the instinct to comfort, to hold her mother and promise everything would be all right the way she'd done countless times over these terrible months. But everything wouldn't be all right. Not anymore. Not ever again. Maybe. He's coming here. Nia's voice was quieter now, but no less firm. At 9. He's arranged for a medical team to evaluate you, to get you into Memorial Sloan Kettering for treatment. He's paying for everything. Iris looked up, her face a mask of devastation, and something that might have been relief. He can't see me like this. I can't. We need to leave. We need to... No. The word landed with finality. We're not running. Not this time. You're going to face him, and you're going to tell both of us the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more deflections, no more protecting me from things you decided I couldn't handle. I'm 25 years old, Mom. I get to know why I grew up without a father. The apartment fell silent except for Iris's ragged breathing and the distant sounds of the building waking up around them. Somewhere above, the Rodriguez family was arguing in rapid Spanish. Below, old Mr. Chen was playing his morning news too loud, the anchor's voices bleeding through the thin floors like ghosts of other people's problems. Nia moved finally, getting the broom and dustpan from the closet, sweeping up the broken mug with mechanical precision. Her mother remained on the floor, watching with red-rimmed eyes that held 25 years of guilt and secrets and fear. I was 19, Iris said finally, her voice barely audible. Just 19, working as a receptionist at his company. He was 28, already important, already on his way to becoming what he is now. And I was nobody. Just some girl from nothing, trying to make rent, trying to survive. Nia dumped the broken ceramic in the trash and sat at the table, not trusting herself to be closer. Keep going. We fell in love. Or I thought we did. He said we did. Iris's hands twisted in her lap, her wedding ring long gone, but the habit of fidgeting where it had been still present. It was intense and fast and felt like everything I'd been told love should feel like. He got the tattoo after 2 months, said he wanted to mark the moment he knew he'd marry me. June 7th, 1999. The day I told him I loved him for the first time. She paused, her breathing labored. Nia wanted to tell her to rest, to save her strength, but the truth was finally spilling and she couldn't bear to stop it. Then I got pregnant. Iris's voice dropped even lower. And everything changed. Not with him at first. He was happy, scared but happy, started planning our future like it was already written. But his family, she laughed bitterly. His family made their position very clear. A receptionist with no degree, no connections, no money, trying to trap their son with a baby. I was trash trying to climb above my station. So you ran. Nia's hands were fists on the table. So I got scared. Iris's correction was sharp. His mother came to me, offered money, a lot of money, enough to disappear, to start over, to give you a life without the constant reminder that your mother wasn't good enough for your father's world. She said if I really loved him, I'd let him go. Let him build his empire without being dragged down by a poor girl and an accidental baby. The words hung in the air like poison. Nia felt sick, understanding beginning to dawn with the terrible clarity of pieces clicking into place. She convinced me he'd resent me eventually, Iris continued, tears still falling, but her voice steadier now, unburdening after years of silence. Convinced me I was being selfish, keeping him tied to a mistake when he could have everything he deserved. And I was 19 and terrified and alone, and I believed her. I took the money, not much, just enough to disappear, and I told Grant I'd miscarried. You let him mourn a child who never died. Nia's voice was hollow. I let him be free to become what he was meant to become. Iris looked up, her eyes pleading for understanding. And he did, didn't he? He built everything his mother said he would. He became powerful and successful and important. What would his life have looked like dragged down by me? By us? That wasn't your choice to make. The words exploded out of Nia, years of frustrated questions and half-truths and carefully maintained lies detonating all at once. You didn't get to decide that for him. You didn't get to decide for me. Maybe he would have chosen us. Maybe we would have been enough. But you never gave him the chance. I was protecting you. From what? From having a father? From resources and opportunities and someone who wanted to be there? You protected me right into poverty, Mom, into working double shifts to afford community college, into dropping out to take care of you because we couldn't afford help. What exactly did your protection give me that was better than what he could have provided? Iris flinched like she'd been struck. A mother who loved you more than anything in this world. A childhood without the pressure of being Grant Holloway's daughter. A life where you were valued for who you were, not whose child you were. And a father who spent 25 years thinking I was dead, Nia was shouting now, all the anger and betrayal of the past 12 hours pouring out unchecked. Do you understand what you did to him? Do you have any idea what that kind of loss does to a person? I think about it every day. Iris's voice broke completely. Every single day for 25 years, I've lived with what I did, with the choice I made. And maybe it was wrong. Maybe I was selfish and scared and stupid, but I can't take it back. I can't give you back the father I stole or give him back the daughter he lost. All I can do is tell you that I did what I thought was right at the time, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The apology sat between them, inadequate and too late and still somehow necessary. Nia felt her rage cooling into something more complicated, something that included understanding even as it refused forgiveness. She looked at her mother, really looked at her. This woman who'd raised her alone, who'd worked herself to exhaustion, who'd made magic out of limited resources and bottomless love. This woman who'd also committed an unforgivable betrayal, who'd stolen 25 years from 2 people because a rich woman had convinced her she wasn't worthy. He'll be here in 2 hours, Nia said finally. You need to shower, get dressed, pull yourself together, because when he walks through that door, you're going to face what you did, all of it. Iris nodded, using the counter to pull herself up with visible effort. She looked like she might say something else, but Naya turned away, unable to handle more revelations, more apologies, more of the terrible weight of understanding why someone you loved had done something unforgivable. The next 2 hours passed in tense silence. Iris showered and dressed in clothes that hung off her diminished frame. Naya cleaned the apartment with frantic energy, scrubbing surfaces that were already clean, organizing things that didn't need organizing, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spinning out completely. She kept checking her phone, watching the minutes tick down toward 9 o'clock and the confrontation that would reshape all of their lives. At 8:55, her phone buzzed. Grant's message was simple. Downstairs. Nia's heart kicked into overdrive. She looked at her mother, who sat on the couch looking smaller and more fragile than seemed possible, her hands clasped in her lap, her face the color of old newspaper. "He's here," Nia said. Iris closed her eyes. "I don't know if I can do this." "You don't have a choice. Neither do I. Neither does he." Nia walked to the door, her hand on the knob. "We all do this together, or we all stay broken separately. Those are the options." She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving it ajar behind her. The stairwell seemed longer than usual, each step echoing in the dingy space that smelled like decades of other people's cooking and lives. When she reached the ground floor, she saw him through the security door. Grant Holloway stood on the sidewalk in front of her building, looking profoundly out of place. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, clearly an attempt at casual, but everything about him screamed wealth and power and displacement. A black SUV idled at the curb, probably containing the medical team he'd mentioned. Early morning foot traffic flowed around him, people heading to work or school, oblivious to the drama about to unfold in apartment 4C. Nia pushed open the security door and Grant's head snapped toward her, his expression a mixture of determination and barely controlled emotion. Up close, in daylight, she could see the resemblance more clearly. They had the same eyes, the same angle to their cheekbones, the same way of holding tension in their shoulders. 25 years of separation couldn't erase genetics. "She knows," Nia said without preamble. "I told her this morning. She's upstairs." Grant nodded, his jaw tight. "The medical team? Can wait in the car for now. This conversation needs to happen first." She paused, then added more quietly. "She was 19. Your mother paid her to disappear. Convinced her you'd be better off without us." She watched the information hit him, saw his expression transform from controlled anger to something rawer, more complicated. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, then slowly relaxed. "My mother." The words came out flat, emotionless, but Nia heard the fury underneath. Of course she did. Iris was scared and young and poor, and your mother made her believe she was doing the right thing. Nia wasn't defending her mother exactly, but she needed Grant to understand the full picture before they went upstairs. It doesn't make it okay, but it wasn't just cruelty or selfishness, it was fear. Fear isn't an excuse for stealing someone's child. Grant's voice was ice. "No," Nia agreed. "It's not. But it's an explanation, and we're all going to need to sit with that explanation for a while because it's the only one we're going to get." They stood there on the sidewalk, father and daughter, preparing for a confrontation that had been 25 years in the making. Around them, the city continued its morning rhythm, indifferent to the small human drama about to play out in a fourth-floor walk-up in Queens. "Is she dying?" Grant asked suddenly. "The cancer. Tell me the truth." "Without treatment, yes. With treatment, maybe not. The doctors say it's aggressive but not hopeless. They caught it early enough that there's a chance." Naya met his eyes. "Your resources could give her years instead of months. That's not an exaggeration. That's math." Grant nodded slowly. "Then let's go save her life. And then let's all figure out how to live with what she did." They climbed the stairs together, their footsteps echoing in sterile rhythm. Nia felt the surreal weight of the moment, of walking her father up to the apartment she'd lived in her entire life, to meet the mother who'd hidden her from him for a quarter century. This should have happened 25 years ago. Or never. But definitely not like this, not fueled by medical crisis and accidental discovery and decades of accumulated grief. The apartment door was still ajar. Nia pushed it open and stepped inside, Grant following. The space looked even smaller with him in it, his presence somehow making the cramped rooms feel more obviously inadequate. She watched him take in the worn furniture, the kitchen with appliances from another decade, the photographs covering every available surface, a visual history of a life he'd been erased from. Iris stood in the center of the living room, hands clasped in front of her like she was awaiting judgment, which, Nia supposed, she was. When her eyes landed on Grant, the color drained from her face and she swayed slightly, gripping the back of the couch for support. "Hello, Iris?" Grant's voice was controlled, almost gentle, but edged with something dangerous. "You look different than I remember." "Grant." It came out as a whisper. I don't. He held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't apologize yet. Don't explain yet. I need you to do something first. I need you to look at her." He gestured to Nia. "Really look at her. That's our daughter. The baby you told me died. She's 25 years old. She graduated high school, went to community college, works double shifts waiting tables. She exists. She's real. She's been real this whole time. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Iris's face crumpled, tears already falling. I know. I spent 25 years mourning a child who never died." Grant's voice rose slightly, control slipping. "I went to therapy. I couldn't form relationships because I was too broken from losing you, from losing our baby. I built an empire because work was the only thing that didn't hurt. And all that time she was here, growing up without me, learning to walk, to read, to become a person. And I missed it. I missed every second of it because you decided I didn't deserve to know she existed." "I thought I was protecting her." Iris's voice broke. "Your mother said she convinced me that my mother is a monster, and I haven't spoken to her in 15 years for reasons that have nothing to do with you." Grant's words were sharp as broken glass. "But you're the one who believed her. You're the one who took the money and disappeared. You're the one who looked me in the face and told me our child was dead. So don't blame her for your choices." Nia stood against the wall, watching this confrontation unfold, feeling like she was observing her own life from outside her body. This was her father, meeting her mother, 25 years too late and under the worst possible circumstances. This was her family, such as it was, fractured before it even had a chance to form. "I was 19 years old." Iris was sobbing now, the words coming out between gasps. "I had nothing. No education, no money, no family. You were building something important, and I was nobody. She made me believe you'd resent me eventually, that you'd hate me for trapping you, and I couldn't bear the thought of you looking at our daughter and seeing a mistake, a burden, something that ruined your life. So instead you made sure I never looked at her at all." Grant's voice was quieter now, more dangerous. "You made that choice for me. Decided I wasn't capable of loving my own child, of choosing my family over ambition. You had such a low opinion of me that you genuinely believed I'd be better off thinking my daughter was dead. I had a low opinion of myself." The words burst out of Iris with shocking force. "I thought I wasn't enough. I thought she deserved better than a mother who could barely pay rent, who had nothing to offer except love. Your mother showed me bank statements, Grant. She showed me your trust fund, your future, all the doors that would open for you if you weren't tied down by us. And I believed her when she said the kindest thing I could do was let you go." "The kindest thing?" Grant laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "You think it was kind to let me spend 25 years in hell? Kind to deprive Nia of a father who wanted her? Kind to build our lives on a foundation of lies?" "No." Iris's legs gave out and she collapsed onto the couch. "No, it wasn't kind. It was stupid and scared and wrong. But it's what I did. And I can't take it back. I can't give you back those years. I can't give either of you back what I stole." Silence fell over the apartment, heavy and suffocating. Nia felt tears on her own cheeks now, grief for all of them, for Grant's lost years, for her own fatherless childhood, for Iris's 25 years of living with impossible guilt. They were all victims of the same lie, all broken by the same choice, all standing in the ruins of what might have been. "I should hate you." Grant's voice was raw now, emotion finally breaking through. "I should walk out of here and never look back. Let you die with your secrets and your guilt." Iris nodded, accepting this. "I would understand." But I can't. The admission seemed to hurt him, because that's Nia's mother. And Nia loves you. I can see it on her face even through the anger. And you're dying, and whatever you did, whatever hell you put me through, I can't watch my daughter lose her mother when I have the resources to prevent it. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Send them up. 4th floor, apartment 4C. He ended the call and looked at Iris with an expression that mixed contempt and compassion in equal measure. The medical team is coming up. They're going to evaluate you, then transport you to Memorial Sloan Kettering. You're getting the best cancer treatment available. And you're going to live, Iris. You're going to live long enough to watch me get to know my daughter, long enough to see what you almost destroyed get rebuilt. That's your punishment. Watching us become a family despite what you did. New tears streamed down Iris's face, but these looked different, gratitude mixed with shame, hope tangled with guilt. Thank you, she whispered. You don't owe me anything, but thank you. I'm not doing it for you, Grant's voice was firm. I'm doing it for her. A knock at the door interrupted them. Nia opened it to reveal 3 people in professional attire carrying medical bags, their faces carefully neutral in the way of people trained to enter crisis situations without judgment. She stepped aside and they filed in, immediately focusing on Iris with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Monroe, I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. We're here to do a preliminary evaluation before transport. Is that all right with you? Iris nodded, wiping her face, trying to compose herself into something resembling the dignified woman she'd been before cancer, and confrontation had stripped her down to essentials. The medical team began their work, checking vitals, asking questions, making notes on tablets while Grant and Nia stood apart, watching. I have so many questions, Grant said quietly, not looking at Nia, but clearly speaking to her. About you. About your life. Everything I missed. I have questions too. Nia's voice was equally quiet. About you. About what you've built. Who you are when you're not playing billionaire philanthropist at galas. I don't know how to do this. The admission came with visible difficulty. Be a father. I've spent 25 years convinced I'd failed at it before I even started. I don't have a roadmap for this. Neither do I. Nia finally looked at him, met his eyes. I don't know how to have a father, especially one who lives in a different world than I do. But maybe we figure it out together, slowly, with a lot of mistakes and patience. Grant's expression softened slightly. I'd like that. And Nia, he paused, seeming to gather courage. I know this is all happening too fast, forced by crisis instead of chosen. But I meant what I said last night. I want to try, to be present, to know you. Not because I feel obligated, but because you're my daughter and I already missed 25 years, and I can't bear to miss any more. Before Nia could respond, Dr. Chen approached them. We need to transport her now. The cancer's more advanced than we'd like, and every day counts. I've already called ahead to Memorial Sloan Kettering. They're prepping a room, and Dr. Morrison, one of the best oncologists in the country, has cleared his schedule. Grant nodded. Whatever she needs. Cost is irrelevant. Understood. Dr. Chen glanced at Nia. You're welcome to ride in the ambulance with your mother. We've got room. Nia looked at Iris, who was being helped onto a portable gurney by the other team members. Her mother caught her eye, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Of love that persisted despite betrayal. Of family bonds that survived even comprehensive lies. Of the complexity of being human and flawed, and trying, failing, trying again. I'll meet you there, Grant said. I need to make some calls, arrange some things, but I'll be there within the hour. The medical team moved with practiced efficiency, navigating the narrow hallway and stairs with the gurney. Nia followed, grabbing her mother's hand as they descended, feeling the fragile bones beneath papery skin. At the building entrance, an ambulance waited, back doors open, ready to receive its patient. They loaded Iris carefully, and Nia climbed in beside her. Through the back window, she saw Grant standing on the sidewalk, phone already at his ear, making things happen with the casual power of someone accustomed to bending reality. Their eyes met briefly before the doors closed, and Nia saw in his face the same complicated tangle of emotions she felt. Anger and love and hope and grief, all wound together into something without a name. The ambulance pulled away from the curb, sirens silent but lights flashing, navigating morning traffic with practiced ease. Inside, surrounded by medical equipment and the quiet competence of Dr. Chen monitoring Iris's vitals, Nia held her mother's hand and felt the weight of everything that had been said and everything still left unspoken. "I'm sorry, baby." Iris's voice was weak but clear. "For all of it. For the lies, for the lost time, for depriving you of him. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I was so wrong." "I know." Nia squeezed her hand gently. "I'm angry and hurt, and I don't know how long it'll take me to fully process all this. But I also know you loved me. That's never been in question. Even when everything else was a lie, that was always true." "Always?" Iris's eyes were closing, exhaustion and medication beginning to pull her under. "He's a good man. Better than I gave him credit for. Promise me you'll let him in. Let him be your father. Don't punish him for my mistakes." "I promise." The words came easier than Nia expected. "Now rest. Save your strength. You've got a lot of fighting ahead." Iris's grip loosened as sleep claimed her. Nia watched her mother's chest rise and fall, monitored by machines that beeped steadily in the enclosed space. 25 years of lies had led to this moment. Her mother dying of cancer, her father a stranger with unlimited resources, and Nia herself caught between worlds, trying to build a bridge across a chasm that shouldn't exist. But maybe bridges were possible. Maybe families could be constructed from ruins and second chances. Maybe truth, however late it arrived, was still worth the devastation it caused. The ambulance merged onto the highway, heading toward Manhattan and Memorial Sloan Kettering, in a future none of them could have predicted 12 hours ago. Nia pulled out her phone and typed a message to Grant. "She's sleeping, stable for now. Thank you for this. For all of it. See you soon." His response came quickly. "See you soon, Nia, and for what it's worth, I'm glad I found you too." Nia closed her eyes and let herself feel it all. The anger at her mother's betrayal, the grief for lost years, the tentative hope for what might still be possible, the fear that cancer might win despite Grant's resources. She let it wash over her without trying to organize it into something manageable, because some things were too big for neat categories. She was Grant Holloway's daughter, a billionaire's child who'd grown up in poverty because of lies and fear and a rich woman's cruelty. She was Iris Monroe's daughter too, raised on love and sacrifice and lies that were meant to protect but only destroyed. She was 25 years old and her entire understanding of her own history had been rewritten in a single night. But she was also still herself. Still the woman who worked double shifts and fought for every dollar. Still the daughter who dropped out of college to care for her dying mother. Still someone who understood what it meant to survive on the margins while dreaming of something better. Now she had a father who could provide that something better. The question was whether she could accept it without losing herself in the process. Whether she could build a relationship with Grant that was real and not just transactional, based on genuine connection rather than guilt and obligation and the ghost of what might have been. The ambulance pulled up to Memorial Sloan Kettering's emergency entrance and the back doors flew open. The team moved with choreographed precision, extracting the gurney and wheeling Iris toward the building where doctors waited, where treatment would begin, where the fight for her life would be waged with every resource modern medicine and unlimited money could provide. Nia followed, her phone buzzing with another message from Grant. "Just pulled into parking. Be there in 2 minutes." And then he was striding through the automatic doors with the confidence of someone who owned every space he entered, his eyes immediately finding Nia in the controlled chaos of the emergency department. He crossed to her without hesitation, and for a moment they just stood there, father and daughter, surrounded by strangers in crisis, and the weight of 25 years finally colliding with the present. "Ready for this?" Grant asked quietly. Nia thought about everything that word encompassed. Watching her mother fight cancer, learning to know this stranger who was her father, rebuilding a family from fragments and lies, forgiving what seemed unforgivable. Ready felt like an impossible standard. "No," she said honestly. "But I'm here anyway." Grant's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. "That's all any of us can do. Show up, even when we're not ready." They followed the medical team deeper into the hospital, into rooms where machines beeped and doctors conferred, and Iris was already being examined by specialists who moved with the casual competence of people at the top of their field. Nia watched Grant watch the proceedings, saw him catalog everything with those sharp eyes, already planning, strategizing, deploying resources to solve a problem that might not be solvable with money alone. But he was trying. For a daughter he'd just met, for a woman who'd betrayed him beyond measure. He was trying, and maybe that was enough for now. Maybe trying was all any of them could offer in the wreckage of what should have been, building toward what might still become possible. The hospital became their world for the next 72 hours. Nia learned the rhythm of Memorial Sloan Kettering the way she'd once learned the layout of restaurants where she'd worked, memorizing which hallways led where, which nurses were compassionate versus efficient, where the decent coffee could be found at 3 in the morning when sleep refused to come. Grant was there constantly, a fixture in the private room he'd secured, making calls in hushed tones near the window, while Iris slept under the influence of medications Nia couldn't pronounce. Dr. Morrison turned out to be a woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and a directness Nia appreciated. She didn't sugarcoat the diagnosis when she sat them down on the second day, Nia and Grant side by side in uncomfortable chairs while Iris dozed behind them. The cancer is stage 3, aggressive, but responsive to treatment, Dr. Morrison said, her hands folded on the table between them. We're looking at chemotherapy, radiation, possibly surgery depending on how the tumors respond. It's going to be brutal, physically and emotionally, but she has a real chance. A good chance, actually, if she can tolerate the treatment protocol. Cost isn't a factor, Grant said immediately. Whatever she needs, experimental treatments, clinical trials, anything that improves her odds. Dr. Morrison's expression softened slightly. I appreciate that, Mr. Holloway, but what she needs most isn't money, it's support. Someone to hold her hand through the hard days. Someone to remind her why she's fighting when the treatment feels worse than the disease. Her eyes moved to Nia, and the weight of that look was crushing. Because Nia understood what the doctor wasn't saying directly. Her mother would need her, completely. The way she'd needed Iris during her own hard times, Iris would now need her daughter's constant presence. I'll be there, Nia said quietly. Whatever she needs. Both of us will, Grant added. And Nia felt surprised gratitude at the us in that statement, at being included in his plans without question. After Dr. Morrison left, they sat in silence for a long moment. Through the window, Manhattan stretched out in its afternoon glory, buildings catching sunlight, the city moving at its relentless pace, while inside this room time seemed suspended, measured only by the beep of monitors and the rise and fall of Iris's breathing. I've been thinking, Grant said finally, not looking at Nia, but at his hands where they rested on his knees. About logistics. Your apartment in Queens is 40 minutes from here on a good day. You'll need to be close during treatment, and working double shifts while your mother goes through chemo isn't sustainable. Nia felt her shoulders tense, recognizing the approach of a conversation she'd been dreading. I can manage. I'm not saying you can't. Grant's voice was careful, diplomatic in a way that suggested he'd prepared this speech. I'm saying you shouldn't have to. I have a guest suite in my residence. 2 bedrooms, private entrance, full kitchen. You and your mother could stay there during treatment. No strings attached, no expectations beyond letting me help. We barely know each other. The words came out sharper than Nia intended. You can't just move us into your home like we're strays you picked up. You're not strays. You're my daughter. She's... He paused, struggling with how to define Iris. She's the mother of my child, the woman I loved 25 years ago. And yes, what she did was unforgivable, but she's also dying, and you love her, and I have the resources to make this easier. Why wouldn't I use them? Because it's too much too fast. Nia stood, needing to move, to pace the small room. 3 days ago, I didn't know you existed. Now you want us living with you? How is that supposed to work? What happens when the medical crisis is over and we're just strangers sharing space? Grant stood too, matching her agitation with forced calm. Then we stop being strangers. We learn each other. We build something real instead of letting fear and pride keep us separate. Easy for you to say. You're not the one giving up independence. Nia heard the defensiveness in her voice. the instinct to protect herself from potential hurt. You're used to controlling situations, fixing problems with money and power. But I'm not a problem to fix. I'm a person who's built a life without you, who knows how to survive, who doesn't need to be rescued. I know that. Grant's voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through. You think I don't see how strong you are, how capable. But strength doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. It doesn't mean you can't accept help when it's offered genuinely. How do I know it's genuine? The question burst out before Nia could stop it, the real fear underneath all the resistance. How do I know this isn't just guilt or obligation, or some billionaire's attempt to rewrite a past he can't change? What happens when the novelty wears off, and I'm just a reminder of everything you lost? The words hung between them, raw and honest, and Nia watched Grant absorb them, watched his face cycle through reactions before settling on something that looked like pain. You want to know why I'm doing this? He moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Nia could see the silver in his eyes, the lines that pain and time had carved into his face. Because when you walked up to me at that gala, when you showed me that tattoo, something broke open that I'd sealed shut for 25 years. Hope. The possibility that maybe the worst thing that ever happened to me wasn't real, that maybe I could have what I'd mourned. He paused, swallowing hard. And yes, there's guilt, mountains of it. Guilt that you grew up in poverty while I built an empire. Guilt that your mother is dying and might not have gotten this sick if she'd had access to regular health care. Guilt that I wasn't there for your first day of school, your first heartbreak, any of the moments that make up a childhood. But underneath the guilt is something simpler. You're my daughter. And I want to know you, not because I owe you, because I choose you. Nia felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. What if I'm not who you want me to be? What if I'm too angry or too damaged or too different from the daughter you imagined? Then you'll be exactly who you are, and I'll learn to love that person. Grant's voice was gentle now, almost tender. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for real, whatever that looks like. Before Nia could respond, a weak voice came from the bed. Stop fighting and just hug already. You're giving me a headache. They both turned to find Iris awake, watching them with exhausted eyes that still held a spark of her old humor. She looked terrible, skin gray against white hospital sheets, but she was smiling faintly at the absurdity of her daughter and her daughter's father having their first real argument while she pretended to sleep. How long have you been awake? Nia moved to the bedside automatically, checking the monitors even though she barely understood what they measured. Long enough to hear Grant offer you a home and you being too stubborn to accept it. Iris's voice was raspy but firm. Baby, I know I don't have the right to give advice about him after what I did, but take it from someone who spent 25 years running from help because pride felt safer than vulnerability. It's a cold way to live. You're one to talk about accepting help, Nia shot back, but without real heat. You worked yourself half to death rather than ask anyone for anything. Exactly. Iris reached for Nia's hand, her grip weak but insistent. And look where it got me. Sick and broke, and watching my daughter destroy her own future, trying to save me. Don't make my mistakes, Nia. When someone offers you genuine help, when someone wants to be in your life, not because they have to, but because they choose to, you let them, even if it's scary, especially if it's scary. Grant had moved closer during this exchange, standing on the other side of the bed, and now Iris turned her attention to him. And you want to help? Really help? Then don't just throw money at the problem. Be present, show up, learn who she is beyond the daughter you lost. Because she's extraordinary, Grant. Smart and brave and kind despite every reason the world gave her not to be. You missed her childhood, but you don't have to miss the rest. The room fell quiet except for the mechanical breathing of hospital equipment. Nia looked at her mother, then at Grant, then back at her mother, feeling the weight of expectation from both sides and the terrifying possibility that maybe they were right. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. Maybe building something real with this stranger who was her father was worth the risk of potential disappointment. Okay, she said finally, the word coming out small but definite. We'll stay with you during treatment, But after that, we figure out something more permanent that doesn't involve me living in your guest suite like some charity case. Relief washed over Grant's face so visibly it was almost embarrassing. Deal. And Nia? You're not a charity case. You're family. There's a difference. I'm still learning what that word means. Nia's voice was honest, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed. Family. I've only ever had her. I don't know how to expand that to include you. Then we'll learn together. Grant pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting so he was level with both of them. No roadmap, no expectations, just three people figuring out how to be something to each other. Iris made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. This is not how I imagined this going. I thought you'd hate me forever, Grant. Thought I'd die with you never knowing she existed. I should hate you. Grant's voice was quiet but honest. Part of me does. The part that mourned a child who never died, that spent years in therapy trying to understand why I wasn't enough to make you stay. That part wants to watch you suffer the way I suffered. Iris flinched but didn't look away, accepting the brutal honesty. But there's another part, Grant continued, that looks at Nia and sees what you built, how you raised her, the person she became despite having nothing, and that part has to acknowledge that maybe you did something right, even if how you did it was wrong. I loved her every single day. Iris's voice broke. Every moment I spent lying to her, every time she asked about her father and I deflected, every year on her birthday when I thought about you and wondered if you ever thought about the baby you believed you'd lost. I loved her so much it hurt. That doesn't excuse what I did, but it's true. I know. Grant's expression was complicated, anger and grief, and something that might have been forgiveness trying to take root. I can see it, in how she talks about you, how she fights for you. You gave her that. Love that's unconditional and fierce. I can't take that from you, even though you took everything from me. The honesty in the room was suffocating. Three people finally speaking truths that had festered for decades or days, depending on perspective. Nia felt like she was watching her entire understanding of family reconstruct itself in real time. Old definitions breaking down to make room for something more complex and fragile and real. A nurse entered to check Iris's vitals, breaking the intensity of the moment. The three of them sat in awkward silence while the nurse worked, each lost in private thoughts about what came next, how to build something functional from such fractured foundations. After the nurse left, Dr. Morrison returned with another doctor, this one a younger man she introduced as Dr. Patel, the surgical oncologist. We've reviewed your mother's scans, Dr. Morrison said, addressing Nia, but including Grant with her gaze. We'd like to start chemotherapy tomorrow, 3 rounds, aggressive dosing, to shrink the tumors before we consider surgery. How long? Iris's question was barely audible. Each round is 3 weeks. Recovery between rounds is 2 weeks, so roughly 4 months before we evaluate for surgery. Dr. Patel's voice was kind but clinical. It's going to be difficult, Mrs. Monroe. Nausea, fatigue, hair loss, immune system suppression. You'll need constant care and monitoring. She'll have it. Grant's statement was final, brooking no argument. Whatever she needs, whenever she needs it. Dr. Morrison nodded, satisfied. Good, we'll start prep work this afternoon. Nia, you should probably go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts the marathon, and you'll need your strength. But the thought of leaving felt impossible. Nia looked at her mother, so small in the hospital bed, and couldn't imagine walking out that door. I'll stay tonight. Go home tomorrow to pack. Make arrangements. I'll have a car take you, Grant offered, and movers if you need help with belongings. I can pack my own apartment. The words came out defensive again, and Nia softened them with effort. But a car would be helpful. Thank you. The doctors left with promises to return in the morning. Evening crept toward night outside the window, Manhattan's lights beginning their nightly performance. A nurse brought dinner trays, but Iris barely touched hers, nausea already setting in from the pre-treatment medications. Nia helped her to the bathroom, steadying her mother's shaking frame, and felt the full weight of role reversal. She'd been the one being cared for her whole life. Now she was the caretaker, watching her mother's dignity erode under the assault of disease and treatment. Grant ordered food for them from somewhere expensive, had it delivered in actual dishes rather than takeout containers. They ate in near silence, the strangeness of the situation rendering conversation difficult. What did you talk about when meeting your father for the first time while your mother lay dying 6 feet away? Tell me about your childhood, Grant said finally, setting down his fork. What was she like? As a mother? Nia glanced at Iris, who was sleeping again, the medications pulling her under. She was everything. Worked 2 jobs most of the time, but always made it to my school events. We were broke, but she'd find ways to make things special. Birthday cakes from scratch because bakery ones cost too much. Halloween costumes sewn together from thrift store finds. Christmas mornings with presents wrapped in newspaper comics because that's what we could afford. Her voice softened with memory. She never made me feel poor, even when we were. Never made it seem like we were missing out, even when we were. She'd say, "We're rich in the ways that matter," and I believed her because she believed it. Grant listened with an expression that cycled between grief and anger and reluctant admiration. She sounds like she was a good mother. She was the best. Nia's loyalty was fierce despite the betrayal, despite everything. Still is. What she did to you, to us, it was wrong, but it doesn't erase 25 years of her being exactly what I needed. I know. Grant's voice was thick. And I hate that I'm grateful to her for that, for raising you well, for loving you the way I should have been there to love you. It's confusing as hell, being furious and thankful at the same time. Welcome to the club. Nia managed a small smile. I've been living in that confusion since yesterday. They fell quiet again, but it felt less awkward now, more like 2 people learning to exist in the same space without needing to fill every silence. Grant pulled out his laptop and worked on something while Nia scrolled mindlessly through her phone, both of them keeping vigil over Iris's sleeping form. Around midnight, Grant spoke again. I need to tell you something. About my mother. About why I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. Nia looked up, sensing this was important. She's a monster, Grant said bluntly. Not in dramatic ways, in small, calculated ways. She believes in bloodlines and breeding and maintaining social position above everything else. When I was building the company, she tried to control every aspect of my life. Who I dated, who I hired, what deals I made. She saw people as assets or liabilities, nothing in between. He paused, pain crossing his features. When Iris told me about the miscarriage, my mother barely pretended to be sympathetic. Said it was probably for the best, since Iris was unsuitable anyway. I was devastated, and she was relieved. That's when I started pulling away. By the time I was 35, I'd cut her off completely, changed my number, moved, made it clear I wanted nothing from her. So when Iris said your mother paid her to leave, Nia said slowly, that fits with who she was. Perfectly. Grant's voice was bitter. She probably saw a 19-year-old receptionist as a threat to the dynasty she was trying to build through me. Offering money to make the problem disappear would have been her first move. Does she know about me now? The question came out smaller than Nia intended. No. Grant's answer was immediate and firm. And she never will, not if I can help it. She lost the right to know you exist when she drove your mother away. I won't give her access to you, Nia. I won't risk her trying to hurt you the way she hurt Iris. The protectiveness in his voice was startling, paternal in a way that made Nia's chest tighten. This man who barely knew her was already building walls between her and potential harm, claiming her as someone worth protecting. What if I want to meet her? Nia asked, testing boundaries. What if I want to understand the woman who changed all our lives? Grant's jaw tightened. Then I'd ask you to wait, to let us build something real first, so you have a foundation when you encounter her poison. But I wouldn't stop you. You're an adult. You get to make your own choices, even ones I disagree with. The answer satisfied something in Nia, this acknowledgement that he wouldn't try to control her even while offering guidance. I don't want to meet her. Not now. Maybe not ever. I'm just testing to see if you'd try to stop me. I learned a long time ago that controlling people only drives them away. Grant's voice held old pain. My mother tried to control everything and ended up alone. I'd rather respect your autonomy and keep you in my life. Good answer. Nia found herself almost smiling. They sat together through the night, taking turns dozing in uncomfortable chairs, monitoring Iris's sleep, existing in the strange liminal space of hospital time where day and night blurred together. Around 4 in the morning, Nia woke from an uneasy sleep to find Grant standing at the window, his silhouette dark against the city lights. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly. He turned, and in the dim light she saw exhaustion written across his features. "Thinking about all the nights I should have been awake with you. When you were a baby, when you were sick, when you had nightmares." "Your mother did all of that alone because I wasn't there. You weren't there because you didn't know I existed." Nia stood, moving to join him at the window. "That's on her, not you." "Is it?" Grant's question was genuine, searching. "Because I keep wondering what I missed, what signs I should have seen. Whether she tried to tell me and I was too focused on building my empire to notice. Whether I'm partly responsible for her fear. She made a choice," Nia's voice was firm. "A bad choice based on fear and manipulation, but still a choice. You don't get to take responsibility for that. You don't get to carry guilt that belongs to her." They stood side by side, looking out at Manhattan waking up, early morning traffic beginning to flow through streets that never truly emptied. Two people bound by blood and circumstance, trying to find their way towards something that resembled family. "I'm scared," Grant admitted quietly. "That I'll fail at this. That I won't know how to be what you need. That the gap between us is too wide to bridge." "I'm scared too," Nia confessed. "That I'll disappoint you. That I'm too broken or angry or poor to fit into your world. That you'll realize having a daughter sounds better in theory than in practice." "Then we're both scared." Grant's voice held something like relief. "Maybe that's where we start. With honesty about our fears." "Maybe." Nia felt something shift between them, some small brick being laid in the foundation of whatever they were building. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you resent me? Even a little? For existing? For being the reason you mourned for 25 years? Grant was quiet for a long moment, and Nia braced for painful honesty. "No," he said finally. "I resent what was taken from me. The chance to see you grow up, to be your father from the beginning. But you? I look at you and see a miracle. A second chance I never expected. How could I resent that?" Nia felt tears burning and didn't fight them this time. "I want to believe you." "Then believe me." Grant turned to face her fully. "I'm not saying this will be easy. We're going to stumble, fight, probably hurt each other accidentally. But I'm committed to trying, to showing up, to being present in whatever way you'll allow. That's my promise to you." Behind them, Iris stirred, making a small sound of distress. They both moved immediately to her bedside, the moment of vulnerability shelved in favor of practical care. Nia adjusted her mother's pillows while Grant found the nurse call button, and together they tended to the woman who'd brought them together through lies and was now forcing them to build truth from ruins. The sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for the gravity of what they faced. Treatment would start in a few hours. The real battle would begin. And somewhere in the midst of fighting for Iris's life, Nia and Grant would have to figure out how to build their own relationship from scratch, learning to be father and daughter 25 years too late. Dr. Morrison arrived at 7 with her team, all business and compassion in equal measure. "Ready to start?" she asked Iris, who looked small and frightened but nodded anyway. They prepped her for the first round of chemotherapy, explaining side effects and protocols while Nia held her mother's hand and Grant stood watch like a sentinel. When the IV went in and the poison that was supposed to heal began flowing into Iris's veins, Nia saw her mother's face contort with fear and determination. "I'm right here," Nia whispered. "We both are. You're not alone in this." Iris's eyes found Grant, holding questions and apologies and desperate hope. "Thank you," she managed, "for being here, for helping, for not letting me die alone and afraid." "You're welcome," Grant said simply, and Nia heard in those 2 words all the complexity he couldn't articulate. Anger that coexisted with compassion, betrayal that lived alongside grace, the terrible, beautiful mess of caring for someone who'd wounded you beyond measure. The machines beeped steadily, marking time and heartbeats, and the beginning of a fight that would consume the next 4 months of all their lives. Nia settled into the chair beside her mother's bed, Grant taking position on the other side, and together they formed a broken, imperfect circle around the woman who'd broken them. But maybe broken things could be repaired. Maybe families could be built from fractured pieces. Maybe truth, however painful, was the foundation on which real love could finally grow. Outside the window, Manhattan moved on with its relentless rhythm. Millions of lives intersecting and diverging. Millions of stories being written in the spaces between buildings and moments. But in room 847 of Memorial Sloan Kettering, 3 people sat together in silence and uncertainty, bound by blood and lies and the desperate choice to try, to show up, to face what came next as something that almost resembled family. The first week of chemotherapy stripped away any romantic notions about fighting cancer with grace and dignity. Iris vomited until there was nothing left to purge, then dry heaved until her ribs ached and her throat was raw. She lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, her face becoming gaunt and skeletal, her hands trembling with weakness that made even holding a cup of water an ordeal. Nia learned to anticipate the nausea, to have bowls ready, to hold her mother's hair back while Grant stood helplessly in the corner, looking like a man accustomed to fixing problems, discovering one that couldn't be solved with money or influence. On the 4th day, Iris's hair started coming out in clumps. Nia found it on the pillow first, dark strands against white cotton, more than the usual shedding. She didn't mention it, hoping irrationally that ignoring it would make it stop. But by evening, Iris was pulling handfuls from her own head, staring at her palms with an expression that mixed horror and resignation. "It's just hair," she said, voice flat. "It'll grow back." "We could shave it," Nia offered, trying to sound practical instead of heartbroken. "Get ahead of it, you know? Take control instead of watching it fall out." Iris looked at her daughter, then at Grant, who'd been sitting in his usual chair near the window working on his laptop. "Would you?" she asked him directly. "Would you help?" Grant's face showed surprise, then understanding. "Of course, if that's what you want." The nurse brought clippers, and they did it right there in the hospital room, Iris sitting on the edge of the bed while Grant carefully buzzed away what remained of her hair. Nia watched her father's hands move with unexpected gentleness over her mother's skull, saw the care he took despite the awkwardness, the anger he still carried. She saw her mother close her eyes against tears, saw vulnerability stripped down to its most basic form. When it was done, Iris looked diminished and somehow stronger at the same time. She ran her hand over her bare scalp, adjusting to the foreign feeling. "I look like a cancer patient now," she said quietly. "Before I could pretend I was just sick. Now everyone will know." "You are a cancer patient," Grant said gently. "Pretending otherwise doesn't change that." "I know," Iris's voice cracked. "But pretending helped, gave me something to hold on to when the truth felt too heavy." Nia understood that impulse intimately. Her mother had spent 25 years pretending Grant was dead because the truth of what she'd done was unbearable. Now cancer was stripping away all her defenses, forcing her to face reality without the protective buffer of denial. They moved into Grant's penthouse the following week, when Iris was stable enough for transport, but still needed constant care between treatment rounds. The space was obscene in its luxury, all floor-to-ceiling windows and marble surfaces and rooms that served single purposes. The guest suite Grant had mentioned turned out to be larger than their entire apartment in Queens, with bedrooms that had ensuite bathrooms and a living area that could have comfortably housed a family of 4. Nia helped her mother into one of the bedrooms, settling her into a bed with sheets that probably cost more than a month's rent. Iris looked overwhelmed, her eyes moving over the opulence with something between wonder and discomfort. "This is too much," she whispered. "We don't belong here." "He wants us here." Nia adjusted the pillows, trying to make her mother comfortable. "And right now, you need to be close to the hospital. This makes sense logistically." "Does it?" Iris caught Nia's hand, holding it with what little strength she had. "Or are we letting him buy our forgiveness? Letting wealth paper over what I did?" The question hung heavy between them. Nia had been asking herself the same thing since they'd agreed to move in, wondering if accepting Grant's help meant absolving him or her mother, or both of them, from the harder work of actually dealing with 25 years of lies. "I don't think forgiveness works that way," Nia said finally. "I think you can be grateful for help and still angry about what made the help necessary. Both things can be true." Iris closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. I'm so tired, baby. Not just from the treatment, from carrying what I did all these years, from watching you two try to build something while I'm the reason it was destroyed in the first place. Then rest. Nia pulled the covers up, tucking her mother in like she was a child. Let us worry about building. You focus on surviving. She left Iris sleeping and found Grant in the kitchen, which was larger than some restaurants Nia had worked in. He was making coffee with a machine that looked like it belonged in a laboratory, all chrome and precision engineering. How is she? He asked without looking up. Tired, overwhelmed, guilty. Nia leaned against the counter, feeling the cool marble through her shirt. This place is a lot. I know. Grant poured 2 cups, handed her one. I've gotten used to it over the years, but I remember when I first made enough money to live like this. Felt like playing pretend in someone else's life. Does it still feel that way? Nia accepted the coffee, which was better than anything she'd ever tasted. Sometimes. Grant's honesty was becoming familiar, this willingness to be vulnerable that seemed at odds with his public persona. When I'm alone here at night, when the space feels too big and too empty, I wonder what I'm trying to prove with all this excess. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking expensive coffee in a kitchen that could have fed a family of 6 for weeks with what the appliances cost. Nia thought about her apartment in Queens, already cleared out and cleaned, their few possessions now stored in a corner of Grant's massive walk-in closet. Her entire life fit into 4 boxes. Grant's life sprawled across 5,000 square feet and multiple properties. Can I ask you something? Nia set down her cup. What happened after my mom disappeared? After you thought the baby died? What did you do? Grant's expression shuddered briefly before he forced it open again, committed to honesty. I fell apart for about 6 months. Couldn't work, couldn't sleep, just replayed everything trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Then I got angry. At myself, at the universe, at the unfairness of it all. And I channeled that anger into building the company. He paused, staring into his coffee like it held answers. I worked 18-hour days for years, made aggressive moves, took risks that should have destroyed me but somehow paid off. People called me ruthless, said I had ice in my veins. They didn't know I was just running from grief, trying to outwork the pain. Did it work? Nia asked quietly. No. The admission was stark. I got rich, got powerful, got respected and feared in equal measure. But the grief never went away. It just got buried under accomplishments and acquisitions. Every success felt hollow because the people I wanted to share it with were gone. We weren't gone. Nia's voice was gentle. We were in Queens struggling to pay rent. I know, Grant looked at her directly, and that's the cruelest part. All those years I was mourning, you were alive, growing up without me. Your mother was raising you alone while I threw myself into empire building. We were living parallel lives that should have intersected. The pain in his voice was raw, and Nia felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness toward this man who was her father. You can't change the past. Neither can she. All we have is now. Is now enough? The question seemed to escape him involuntarily. Can we build something real from this disaster? I don't know. Nia's honesty matched his. But I want to try. That has to count for something. Grant nodded slowly, and Nia saw relief cross his features. They were finding their rhythm, these two strangers, learning to be family, building trust through small moments of vulnerability. The days developed a pattern. Mornings, Grant left for his office downtown, though he called multiple times to check on Iris. Afternoons, Nia sat with her mother, reading aloud or just keeping her company through the waves of nausea and pain. Evenings, Grant returned and they ate dinner together, the 3 of them navigating awkward conversation and longer silences, learning each other in increments. 2 weeks into their stay, during a particularly bad night when Iris couldn't keep anything down, Grant showed up in the guest suite at 3 a.m. Nia was half asleep in the chair beside her mother's bed, holding a bowl, while Iris heaved miserably. I heard, Grant said simply, moving to help without being asked. He held Iris's shoulders steady while Nia wiped her mother's face with a cool cloth, and together they got her cleaned up and back into bed. You don't have to do this, Iris whispered, her voice shredded from vomiting. I don't deserve your help. Probably not. Grant's agreement was brutal, but not unkind. But Nia deserves a mother, and you're fighting to stay alive for her. That counts for something. It was the closest he'd come to forgiving Iris, this acknowledgement that her current suffering and effort mattered, even if her past choices remained unforgivable. Nia watched her mother absorb this, saw something shift in her expression that might have been hope. After Iris fell back asleep, Grant and Nia stood in the hallway outside the guest suite, both exhausted and wired in the strange way that 3 a.m. crises created. "Thank you," Nia said, "for being here, for helping." That's what family does. Grant's use of the word was deliberate, claiming it despite all the complications. We show up for each other, even when it's messy and painful, and we'd rather be anywhere else. Especially then. Grant managed a tired smile. The easy stuff doesn't build bonds. It's the hard moments that prove what we mean to each other. Nia felt something loosen in her chest, some knot of fear she'd been carrying since the night at the gala. Maybe they could do this. Maybe family wasn't about perfect harmony or uncomplicated love. Maybe it was about showing up at 3 in the morning to help someone who'd wronged you, about choosing connection despite every reason to walk away. The second round of chemotherapy hit harder than the first. Iris's immune system crashed, and she developed an infection that required additional hospitalization. They spent 5 days in the hospital while doctors pumped her full of antibiotics and monitored her vitals obsessively. Grant arranged for a cot to be brought into the room so Nia could sleep near her mother, and he himself showed up every evening after work, still in his suit, looking exhausted but present. One night, while Iris slept fitfully and Nia dozed in the cot, Grant received a phone call that made his face go rigid. He stepped into the hallway to take it, but Nia heard his voice through the door, sharp and cold, in a way she'd never heard before. When he returned, his expression was controlled rage barely contained. "What happened?" Nia asked, sitting up. "My mother." Grant's voice was flat. "She found out about you, about Iris. Someone saw us at the hospital, put it together, and she called to express her displeasure that I'm harboring the woman who tried to trap me 25 years ago and her daughter." Nia felt ice slide down her spine. "What did you say?" "I told her to go to hell." Grant's smile was sharp and mirthless. "Told her that she destroyed my chance at happiness once, and I wouldn't let her do it again. Then I hung up on her. She's been calling back for the past 10 minutes, but I'm not answering." "She's your mother." The words came out uncertain. "Don't you have to—" "She stopped being my mother when she drove away the woman I loved and lied about it for 25 years. Grant's voice was absolute. "She doesn't get access to you, Nia. She doesn't get to poison what we're building. I won't allow it." Ow. The protectiveness in his voice was fierce, paternal in a way that made Nia's throat tighten. This man who barely knew her was already drawing lines, establishing boundaries to keep her safe from harm he understood intimately. "What if she shows up here?" Nia asked quietly. "She won't." Grant's certainty was cold. "I made it very clear what would happen to her trust fund if she tried. Money is the only language my mother speaks, and I just threatened her in terms she understands perfectly." Nia wanted to ask what he'd threatened exactly, but Iris stirred, pulling their attention back to the bed. Her mother's eyes opened, confused and disoriented from fever and medication. "Grant?" Iris's voice was weak. "Is that you?" "I'm here." He moved to the bedside immediately, falling back into the caretaker role they had all adopted. "What do you need?" "I need to tell you something." Iris struggled to sit up, her movements clumsy and weak. "About your mother. About what she said to me. She said to—" Grant helped prop her up with pillows, his movements gentle despite the tension radiating through his body. "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do." Iris's voice gained strength, urgency overriding exhaustion. "I need you both to understand what happened. All of it." Nia moved to sit on the edge of the bed, sensing this was important, that her mother was finally ready to speak truths she'd been holding for decades. "She didn't just offer me money," Iris began, her words coming slowly but deliberately. "She threatened me. Said if I didn't disappear, if I didn't tell you the baby died, she'd make sure I never worked again. She'd destroy my reputation, make it impossible for me to support myself or the baby. She had power, connections, resources I couldn't fight." Grant's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent, letting Iris continue. I was 19 and terrified and alone. Iris's voice cracked. My own family had disowned me for getting pregnant. I had no education, no support system, nothing. She painted a picture of my future if I stayed, poverty, struggle, watching you resent me for ruining your potential. And she painted a different picture if I left. Enough money to disappear, to start over somewhere new, to give the baby a chance at life even if it meant lying to you. Tears were streaming down Iris's face now. I believed her. I believed that loving you meant letting you go, that the kindest thing I could do was let you think the baby died so you could move on without guilt. She convinced me I was being noble, sacrificing my happiness for yours. You weren't noble. Grant's voice was rough. You were scared and manipulated. There's a difference. I know that now. Iris reached for his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, he let her take it. I know I should have fought harder, trusted you more, believed we could find a way. But I didn't. I took the coward's way out, and it cost us everything. It cost us 25 years. Grant's grip tightened slightly on her hand. 25 years I can never get back. I know. Iris's voice was barely a whisper. And I'm sorry. I'll spend whatever time I have left being sorry, but I need you to understand it wasn't just greed or selfishness. It was fear. Fear that she was right, that I wasn't enough, that loving you meant destroying you. Grant was quiet for a long moment, his thumb moving absently over Iris's knuckles. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. My mother is a master manipulator. She finds people's weaknesses and exploits them without mercy. I've watched her destroy careers, relationships, lives, all while believing she was doing the right thing, so I understand how she convinced you. I understand the fear. He paused, swallowing hard. But understanding doesn't erase the damage. It doesn't give me back the daughter I mourned or the life we could have built. It just makes the whole thing more tragic, because it means we were both victims of the same woman's cruelty. Nia watched this exchange, saw her parents finally speaking the truth they'd been circling around for weeks. There was no absolution here, no magical moment of forgiveness that erased the past. Just two people damaged by the same source, trying to find their way through pain towards something that might eventually resemble peace. I don't forgive you, Grant said finally, his honesty brutal but necessary. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm trying to understand, and I'm here, helping you fight this cancer, because Nia loves you, and you're fighting to stay alive for her. That has to be enough for now. It's more than I deserve. Iris's voice was thick with tears. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while, the three of them connected by held hands and shared grief and the slow, painful work of trying to heal what had been broken. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed too beautiful for the weight of what they were carrying. Iris was released from the hospital 3 days later, weak but stable. The infection had responded to antibiotics, her immune system slowly recovering enough to continue treatment. Dr. Morrison warned them the third round would be the hardest, that Iris's body was already depleted and they needed to be prepared for complications. Back at the penthouse, they settled into their routine again, but something had shifted. The confrontation about Grant's mother and Iris's full confession had cleared the air, made space for more honest interaction. Grant still carried anger, still held himself slightly apart, but he was present in ways that mattered. He learned what foods Iris could tolerate, bought ginger tea in bulk, rearranged his schedule to be home during the worst of her nausea cycles. And slowly, carefully, he began teaching Nia about his world. He took her to his office, introduced her to his team, explained the deals he was working on in language she could understand. He didn't push, didn't try to force her into his life, but he opened doors and let her choose whether to walk through them. One evening, about 6 weeks into treatment, Grant found Nia on the penthouse balcony staring out at the city. She'd been crying, her face blotchy and red, and he didn't ask why, just stood beside her, offering silent presence. I'm angry at her, Nia said finally. At my mom, for lying, for stealing you from me, for making choices that weren't hers to make. But I also love her desperately, and I'm terrified she's going to die, and I'll lose her before I figure out how to forgive her. Those feelings can coexist, Grant said quietly. Love and anger aren't mutually exclusive. Neither are grief and rage. How do you do it? Nia turned to look at him. How do you show up for her every day when she's the reason you lost everything? Grant was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Because she's the reason I found you. And as much as I hate what she did, as furious as I am about the years I lost, I can't regret anything that led to this moment, to knowing you, to having you in my life. His voice roughened with emotion. She's dying, Nia. And when she's gone, you and I will be all each other has. This family that shouldn't exist, that was built on lies and fear and tragedy, but that's real anyway. I show up for her because it's practice for showing up for you. Because it's teaching me how to be present, how to care even when it's hard, how to be the father I should have been all along. Nia felt tears spilling over again, but these were different. Not grief or anger, but something closer to gratitude. To recognition that maybe, impossibly, something good was emerging from the wreckage of 25 years of lies. I'm glad I found you, she whispered. Even like this. Even with everything. I'm glad. Grant pulled her into a hug, the first real embrace they'd shared, and Nia felt his arms around her and thought, this is what having a father feels like. This safety, this presence, this sense of being claimed and protected and valued simply for existing. They stood like that for a long time, father and daughter, overlooking a city that had witnessed their separation and was now witnessing their slow, painful reunion. Behind them, through the windows, Iris slept in the guest suite, fighting for her life so she could watch them build what she'd almost destroyed. The third round of chemotherapy began on a Tuesday morning. Iris was admitted to the hospital again, her body too weak for outpatient treatment. Dr. Morrison's face was grave when she explained the treatment plan, the increased monitoring required, the real possibility that Iris's body might not be able to tolerate the aggressive protocol. We're at a decision point, Dr. Morrison said, addressing all three of them in the hospital room. We can continue with the current plan and risk serious complications, or we can scale back to a gentler approach that's less likely to achieve full remission, but also less likely to kill her in the process. Iris looked at Nia, then at Grant, her face showing the terror of someone being asked to gamble with their own life. What would you do? She asked the doctor. I can't make that decision for you. Dr. Morrison's voice was kind but firm. But I can tell you that your body is severely compromised. Another round at this intensity could push you past the point of recovery. So I could die from the cancer or die from the treatment. Iris's laugh was bitter. Some choice. Mom. Nia gripped her mother's hand. Whatever you decide, we're here. We'll support it. Iris looked at Grant, holding his gaze. What do you think I should do? The question held weight beyond the medical decision. She was asking for his opinion, for his input into her life and death, acknowledging his right to care about the outcome. Grant seemed to understand this, his expression showing the complexity of being asked to participate in keeping alive the woman who'd stolen 25 years from him. I think, he said slowly, that you should fight as hard as you can for as long as you can. Not for me. Not even for yourself. But for Nia, who deserves more time with her mother. Who deserves the chance to find forgiveness before you're gone. So fight, Iris. Fight like hell. And we'll be right here fighting with you. Iris nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay, she told Dr. Morrison. Continue the aggressive treatment. I'm not giving up yet. Dr. Morrison looked relieved and worried in equal measure. All right, we start tomorrow. I want you to understand the risks. I understand. Iris's voice was firm. But I'm not ready to die. Not when I finally have a chance to make things right. The doctor left and they sat in heavy silence, the weight of the decision settling over them. Nia felt fear clawing at her throat, the very real possibility that her mother might not survive the treatment meant to save her. Grant looked pale, his usual composure cracked by the stakes of what they were facing. I need to tell you both something, Iris said suddenly, her voice urgent despite her weakness. In case I don't make it through this next round, in case this is my last chance to say it. Mom, don't, Nia started, but Iris shook her head. Let me say this, please. Iris looked between them, her eyes holding fierce determination. Grant, What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. But you need to know that I loved you. Desperately. Completely. And that love is why I made the terrible choice I made. I thought I was protecting you from being trapped by someone beneath you. I was wrong, but I did it from love. She turned to Nia. And baby, you have been the joy of my entire life. Every hard day, every struggle, every moment I questioned my choice, you made it worth it. You are the best thing I ever did. And I need you to know that if I don't survive this, you're not losing your mother, you're gaining your father, and he will take care of you in ways I never could. You're going to survive this, Nia insisted, her voice breaking. You're going to fight, and you're going to win, and we're all going to figure out how to be a family together. Maybe, Iris smiled sadly. But just in case, I needed you both to know. I'm sorry for the pain I caused, and I'm grateful for the grace you've shown me despite it. That's all I can ask for. Grant stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders tight with emotion. Nia watched him struggle to maintain control, saw him lose the battle as his shoulders began to shake. He was crying silently, this man who'd built an empire on ruthlessness and control, crying for the woman who destroyed him, and the possibility that she might die before any of them found real peace. Nia crossed the room and put her hand on Grant's shoulder, feeling him flinch at the contact before relaxing into it. They stood like that for a long moment, father and daughter drawing strength from each other while Iris watched from the bed, her face a mixture of pain and gratitude at the connection she'd almost prevented from ever existing. I'm not ready to lose either of you, Grant said finally, his voice rough. I just found you both. 25 years too late, but I found you, and now cancer is trying to take one of you away before we've had any real time together. Then we make the time we have count. Iris's voice was stronger now, fueled by determination. No more apologies, no more dwelling on what we lost. We focus on what we still have, however long that is. The third round of chemotherapy began the next morning, and it was brutal beyond anything they'd experienced. Iris's body rebelled against the poison meant to save it, her vitals crashing twice in the first 48 hours. Dr. Morrison and her team worked around the clock, adjusting medications, monitoring every fluctuation, fighting to keep Iris stable enough to continue treatment while her body tried to shut down. Nia and Grant maintained vigil in shifts, neither willing to leave her alone. They ate hospital cafeteria food that tasted like cardboard, slept in chairs that destroyed their backs, and existed in the strange suspended reality of critical care where time moved differently and the outside world ceased to matter. On the fourth day, Iris developed a fever that spiked to dangerous levels. Nia watched helplessly as her mother shook with chills despite multiple blankets, her teeth chattering, her skin burning to the touch. The medical team descended with ice packs and medications, their movements efficient, but their expressions grave. Her body is fighting too many battles at once, Dr. Morrison explained quietly, pulling Nia and Grant into the hallway. The chemo is attacking the cancer, but it's also destroying her immune system. The fever indicates infection, which means we need to stop treatment immediately and focus on keeping her alive. What are her chances? Grant's question was blunt, cutting through medical euphemisms to the truth underneath. Dr. Morrison hesitated, and that hesitation told them everything. Right now? Maybe 60-40. If we can get the infection under control in the next 24 hours, those odds improve significantly. But if her body can't fight this off, if she develops sepsis or her organs start failing. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Nia felt the floor tilt beneath her, the world narrowing to a single terrible truth. Her mother might die. Not eventually, not months from now, but in the next day or two, in this sterile hospital room while machines beeped and monitors displayed numbers that meant the difference between life and death. Tell me what to do. Nia's voice came out desperate. There has to be something, some treatment or procedure or... We're doing everything we can, Dr. Morrison said gently. The rest is up to her body, up to whether she's strong enough to fight this. Grant's arm came around Nia's shoulders, solid and grounding. Can we see her? Of course, but prepare yourselves. She's not conscious right now. The fever and the medication have her pretty out of it. They went back into the room where Iris lay small and still beneath white sheets, her newly bald head making her look simultaneously childlike and ancient. Machines surrounded her like mechanical sentinels, breathing for her, monitoring her, keeping her tethered to life through tubes and wires and the impersonal efficiency of modern medicine. Nia pulled a chair close to the bed and took her mother's hand, feeling the heat radiating from her skin. "I'm here, Mama," she whispered, reverting to the childhood name she hadn't used in years. "I'm right here, and I need you to fight. I need you to stay." Grant stood on the other side of the bed, his hand resting lightly on Iris's shoulder. "You don't get to leave yet," he said, his voice low but firm. "You don't get to confess everything and ask for understanding and then die before we figure out what forgiveness looks like. That's not how this works." They maintained their vigil through the day and into the night. Nurses came and went, adjusting medications, checking vitals, their faces professionally neutral, but their eyes showing concern. Dr. Morrison stopped by every few hours with updates that were really just different ways of saying they had to wait and see. Around midnight, Nia dozed off in her chair, exhausted beyond the point of staying conscious. She woke hours later to find Grant still standing exactly where he'd been, his hand still on Iris's shoulder, his eyes fixed on her face like he could will her to keep breathing through sheer force of attention. "You should sleep," Nia said quietly. "Can't." Grant's voice was hoarse from disuse. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her dying. See myself having to tell you I couldn't save her. I can't." His voice broke. "I can't lose her again. Even after everything she did, even with all the anger I still carry, I can't watch her die." The admission was raw, stripping away the last of his carefully maintained control. Nia saw her father clearly in that moment. Not the billionaire, not the empire builder, but just a man terrified of losing someone he'd loved once and was learning to care for again despite every reason not to. "She's strong," Nia offered, needing to believe it. "She survived 25 years of guilt and poverty and raising me alone. She can survive this." "I hope so." Grant's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "Because I'm not ready to say goodbye. I thought I was. Thought I'd buried her 25 years ago and moved on. But seeing her like this, knowing she might actually die, I realized I never stopped loving her. The love just got buried under hurt and anger, but it's still there." Before Nia could respond, Iris stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused, her lips moving soundlessly. Grant leaned closer immediately. "Iris? Can you hear me?" Her eyes found his face, recognition blooming slowly. "Grant," she whispered, the word barely audible. "You're still here." "Where else would I be?" His voice was gentle. "You're fighting for your life." "Of course I'm here." "The baby?" Iris's hand moved weakly, searching, and Nia caught it. "I'm right here, Mama. I'm okay." Iris's eyes closed again, but her grip tightened slightly on Nia's hand. "Good," she breathed. "That's good. You two, you have to take care of each other. Promise me." "You're going to be fine," Grant insisted, but his voice shook. "You're going to get through this, and we're all going to take care of each other." "Promise," Iris repeated, her eyes opening again with surprising intensity. "If I don't make it, promise me you'll be a family. Promise you won't let what I did keep you apart." "I promise." Grant's voice was thick. "But you're going to make it. You don't get to leave now." Iris smiled faintly. "Bossy. You always were bossy." Her eyes drifted closed again, and within moments her breathing had evened out into sleep. Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway, summoned by the monitors that tracked every fluctuation. She checked Iris's vitals, made notes on her tablet, and Nia watched her face for any sign of what the numbers meant. "The fever's down," Dr. Morrison said finally, and Nia heard Grant exhale sharply beside her. "Not by much, but it's movement in the right direction. Her body's responding to the antibiotics. I'm cautiously optimistic." "Cautiously optimistic," Grant repeated. "What does that mean in terms of actual odds?" "It means she's fighting, and if she keeps fighting like this for the next 12 hours, her chances improve significantly. But we're not out of the woods yet." The doctor left, and Nia slumped back in her chair, the brief moment of hope leaving her somehow more exhausted than the fear had. Grant sank into the chair on the other side of the bed, looking older than she'd ever seen him. "When this is over," he said quietly, "when she's stable and through treatment, I want to do something." "What?" Nia asked. "Start a foundation. Her family's dealing with cancer who can't afford treatment. So no one has to make the choices your mother made, has to live with that kind of fear and desperation. Grant's voice gained strength as he talked. I have the resources. We could fund research, cover treatment costs, provide support systems, turn this nightmare into something that helps other people. Nia felt something shift in her chest, understanding blooming. You want to make meaning out of this. I want to make sure some good comes from all this pain, Grant corrected. Your mother was manipulated partly because she was poor and vulnerable. What if she'd had resources, support? What if someone had told her there were options besides disappearing with her child? It wouldn't have changed what your mother did to her, Nia pointed out. No, but it might have changed how Iris responded, given her the strength to fight back, to choose differently. Grant looked at Iris's sleeping form. I can't fix the past, but maybe I can help prevent the same thing from happening to other families. They sat in silence, contemplating this future possibility, this way of transforming their private tragedy into public good. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking again, another day arriving whether they were ready for it or not. The fever broke completely by noon. Iris woke more alert, able to keep down sips of water, her body finally responding to treatment. Dr. Morrison's cautious optimism became genuine relief as the hours passed and Iris's vitals continued to improve. She turned the corner, the doctor told them on the evening of the 6th day. She's not out of danger completely, but she's fighting back. Her body's responding to the antibiotics, and her immune system is rallying. If this continues, we can complete the treatment cycle. Nia felt tears of relief streaming down her face. Grant made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, his hand gripping Iris's with visible emotion. They'd come so close to losing her, to having their fragile attempt at family destroyed before it barely began. Over the next 2 weeks, Iris slowly stabilized. The infection receded, her strength began returning in small increments, and Dr. Morrison cautiously declared the 3rd round of chemotherapy complete. The tumors were responding, shrinking under the assault of treatment that had nearly killed her in the process of saving her. We'll do another round of scans in 2 weeks, Dr. Morrison said. See where we stand in terms of surgery. But I have to say, Iris, you've beaten some pretty significant odds. Your body's tougher than we gave it credit for. Iris smiled weakly from her bed. I had reasons to fight. Her eyes moved to Nia and Grant, acknowledging the truth that she'd survived partly through sheer will powered by the need to stay alive for them, to give them all more time to figure out what family meant. They returned to the penthouse, to the guest suite that had become familiar during the months of treatment. Iris was weak but improving daily, able to move from bed to chair, to eat small meals, to exist without the constant specter of imminent death hanging over every moment. One evening, about a month after the crisis, Nia found Grant on the balcony again. He'd been out there a lot lately, staring at the city like it held answers he was still trying to decode. What are you thinking about? She asked, joining him at the railing. About how different my life looks now than it did 4 months ago. Grant's voice held wonder. 4 months ago I was alone, successful and wealthy, and completely alone. Now I have a daughter. And He paused, searching for the right word. A complicated relationship with the woman who broke your heart 25 years ago? Nia supplied. Grant laughed, the sound genuine and warm. That's one way to put it. I was going to say I have people who matter, people I care about, a reason to come home at night instead of working until I'm too exhausted to think. Do you regret it? Nia asked. The complications, the mess, all of it? Not for a second. Grant turned to look at her directly. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Nia. Even like this, even with all the pain and fear and uncertainty, you're worth every difficult moment. Nia felt warmth bloom in her chest, the words landing in places that had been empty her entire life. You're pretty great too, for a billionaire I just met. High praise, Grant said dryly, but he was smiling. They stood together watching the city, and Nia thought about how far they'd come in 4 months. From strangers connected only by DNA to something that was starting to feel like actual family. It wasn't perfect, wasn't anywhere close to the idealized version of father-daughter relationships she'd seen in movies. But it was real, built on honesty and presence and the choice to keep showing up even when it was hard. The scan results came back 2 weeks later, and Dr. Morrison delivered the news with barely contained excitement. The tumors have shrunk by 70%. That's extraordinary response to treatment. We're looking at surgery in the next month, and if that goes well, you could be in full remission within 6 months. Iris cried, overwhelmed by the news after months of fighting and uncertainty. Nia held her mother while Grant stood nearby, his own eyes suspiciously bright. They'd done it. Against odds that had seemed impossible, they'd gotten Iris to the other side of the worst of it. There's still a long road ahead, Dr. Morrison cautioned. Surgery, recovery, monitoring, but you've made it through the hardest part. You should be proud. After the doctor left, the three of them sat in the hospital room that had become their second home, absorbing the magnitude of the news. Iris was going to survive. Not just survive treatment, but potentially beat the cancer entirely. They were going to have time, months, years, a future that had seemed impossible when Nia first discovered that tattoo at the gala. I want to do something, Iris said suddenly. When I'm recovered, when I'm strong enough, I want to go back to that gala venue, to the exact spot where this all started, and I want to thank whatever force in the universe brought you two together. Mom, Nia started, but Grant interrupted. I think that's a perfect idea, he said quietly. A way to mark the end of this chapter and the beginning of whatever comes next. And so 3 months later, after successful surgery and early recovery, they returned to the Rothschild Hotel. Not for a gala this time, but for a private moment in the ballroom where Nia had first seen Grant's tattoo, where 5 words had shattered a billionaire's world and reconstructed it into something more real. The hotel staff had cleared the space for them, this strange request from Grant Holloway, who'd once emptied the room for a private crisis. Now the ballroom stood empty again, chandeliers dark, only the afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows to illuminate the marble floors. Iris had lost weight but gained strength, her hair beginning to grow back in soft patches, her eyes clear for the first time in months. She stood in the center of the ballroom, Nia on one side and Grant on the other, the three of them forming a small circle in the vast space. This is where it started, Iris said, her voice echoing slightly. Where a lie I'd carried for 25 years finally caught up with me, where everything I thought I was protecting came crashing down. And where I found my daughter, Grant added, where the worst night of my life became the best. Where I learned I had a father, Nia finished, and started figuring out what that meant. They stood in silence for a moment, each processing the weight of what had transpired in this room, the chain of events that had led from a champagne tray and a tattoo to surgery and remission and this moment of quiet gratitude. I spent 25 years convinced I'd made the right choice, Iris said quietly, convinced that lying to you both was noble somehow. But standing here, seeing what you've built together in just a few months, I understand what I stole, not just from Grant, but from you, Nia. The right to know your father, the resources and opportunities he could have provided, a childhood without poverty and struggle. You gave me other things, Nia said, the words coming easier now than they had months ago. You gave me resilience, taught me to value things that can't be bought, showed me what unconditional love looks like even when it's imperfect. But you deserved both, Grant interjected. The love and the resources, the stability and the opportunities. You shouldn't have had to choose. No, Iris agreed. She shouldn't have. And that's on me. That's my failure as a mother and as a person. She turned to Grant, her eyes holding decades of regret. I can't give you back what I stole. Can't undo the damage or erase the pain. All I can do is say I'm sorry and mean it with everything I am. Grant was quiet, his face working through emotions too complex to name. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with feeling. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you. The hurt runs too deep, the loss too profound. But I'm learning to live with what happened. Learning to focus on what we have now instead of what we lost then. He paused, then continued. And I'm grateful. I hate that I'm grateful, but I am. Because cancer forced all of this into the open, forced us to confront the lies and build something real. If you hadn't gotten sick, if Nia hadn't been working that gala, we might have lived our whole lives never knowing the truth. And that would have been a different kind of tragedy. Iris nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm grateful too, for the second chance, for getting to see you two become family, for surviving long enough to witness what I almost destroyed. Nia felt her own tears falling, moved by the brutal honesty, the refusal to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't, the commitment to building something real even when it hurt. This was family, she realized. Not the sanitized version from greeting cards and television shows, but the messy, complicated, painful reality of people choosing to love each other despite damage and betrayal and loss. "So what happens now?" she asked. "After this moment, after all of this." Grant pulled out his phone and opened a document, handing it to Nia. She scanned the legal language, her eyes widening as she understood what she was reading. You're establishing a foundation?" "The Iris Monroe Foundation for Cancer Support," Grant confirmed. "Funded initially with $50 million, with more to come as needed. It'll cover treatment costs for families who can't afford care, fund research, provide support systems. Everything your mother needed and didn't have." Iris made a sound of shock. "You named it after me? After what I did?" "I named it after the woman who survived," Grant corrected, "who fought through hell and came out the other side, who made terrible choices from fear, but spent 25 years being an extraordinary mother despite having nothing. That woman deserves to be remembered for more than her mistakes." I can't." Iris couldn't seem to form complete sentences, overwhelmed by the gesture. "It's already done," Grant said firmly. "Papers are filed, board is established. Nia's on it naturally, along with Dr. Morrison and several other oncologists and patient advocates. We launch in 3 months. Nia stared at the document, at this transformation of their private pain into public good, at her father's way of making meaning from suffering. "This is going to help so many people." "That's the idea." Grant's voice held quiet satisfaction. "Can't change our story, but maybe we can change someone else's." They stood together in the ballroom where it had all begun, 3 people bound by blood and lies and the slow, painful work of building trust from ruins. Outside, the city moved at its relentless pace, millions of lives intersecting and diverging, millions of stories being written. But in this moment, in this space, their story had reached a kind of resolution. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but real. "I should get back to work," Grant said eventually. "I have a meeting in an hour." "And I have physical therapy," Iris added. "Building back strength is no joke." "I'll come with you," Nia offered. "Keep you company." They moved toward the exit together, this unlikely family, navigating the space between them with more comfort now than they'd had months ago. At the door, Grant paused and pulled up his sleeve, exposing the tattoo on his wrist. 2 intertwined hearts. A date. A name. "June 7th, 1999, he said quietly. "The day I told you I loved you. I got this tattoo because I was sure we'd found forever." Iris pulled up her own sleeve, revealing her identical tattoo. "I got mine the same day, because I thought I'd found forever too. I just didn't understand what forever actually required." "It requires honesty," Grant said. "Trust. Presence. All the things we didn't have then but are learning now." "Better late than never?" Iris's question was tentative. "Better late than never," Grant confirmed. They left the ballroom and emerged into Manhattan's afternoon sunshine, the 3 of them squinting against the brightness after the dim interior. A car waited at the curb, Grant's driver ready to take them wherever they needed to go. "Lunch first?" Grant suggested. "There's a place nearby that makes excellent soup, gentle on recovering digestive systems." "Soup sounds perfect," Iris agreed. They climbed into the car and Nia found herself sandwiched between her parents, this word that still felt new but was becoming more familiar with each passing day. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a gala and a tattoo to hospital rooms and chemotherapy to remission and foundation building, and this moment of simple normalcy. They'd lost 25 years. That truth remained unchangeable, a permanent scar on all their lives. But they'd also found each other, impossibly, against odds that should have kept them separated forever. And they were choosing to build something real from the wreckage, to transform lies into truth and pain into purpose. The car pulled away from the hotel and merged into traffic. Through the window, Nia watched the city pass by, all those buildings holding all those stories, all those people navigating their own complicated relationships and private griefs. Somewhere in those buildings, someone else was probably facing an impossible choice, struggling with fear and poverty and the terrible mathematics of survival. And in 3 months, the Iris Monroe Foundation would open its doors, ready to offer support that Iris had never received, resources that might prevent another young mother from believing she had to choose between love and survival, between keeping her child and releasing the father. "What are you thinking about?" Grant asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About how one moment can change everything," Naya said. "How 5 words at a gala led to all of this. The good and the terrible and everything in between." "My mother has the exact same tattoo," Iris quoted softly. "5 words that saved my life and gave you back your daughter." "5 words that gave me back both of you," Grant corrected. "For better or worse, we're a family now. And I wouldn't change that for anything." The car stopped at a restaurant and they filed out onto the sidewalk. Nia watched her father hold the door for her mother, saw the careful courtesy he showed her, the complicated dance of two people learning to exist in each other's lives again after 25 years and a lifetime of hurt. It wasn't romance, wasn't anything close to what they'd had when they were young, but it was respect, consideration, the foundation of something that might eventually become friendship. Inside, they were seated at a quiet corner table. Grant ordered for all of them, remembering Iris's dietary restrictions without being asked, demonstrating the attention to detail that had probably made him successful in business, but that now manifested as care for people he loved. "I've been thinking," Iris said as they waited for food, "about going back to school, getting my GED, maybe taking some college classes. I never finished high school because I was pregnant and scared and thought education was out of reach." "I think that's an excellent idea," Grant said immediately. "I can help with costs, logistics, whatever you need. I want to pay for it myself." Iris's voice was gentle but firm. "I've relied on you enough. This needs to be something I do, something I earn." Grant looked like he wanted to argue but caught himself. "Then I respect that. But if you change your mind, the offer stands." Nia watched this exchange, seeing her parents negotiate boundaries and independence, learning to support each other without control or obligation. It was a delicate dance, made more complicated by history and hurt, but they were doing it. They were trying. The food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence, broken by occasional conversation about small things. Iris's physical therapy progress, Grant's latest business deal, Nia's thoughts about maybe returning to college herself, finishing the degree she'd abandoned to care for her mother. "I'd like that," Grant said when she mentioned it. "And before you insist on paying for it yourself, understand that fathers help with their children's education. It's not charity, it's what family does." "Okay," Nia agreed, the word coming easier now. "But I'm choosing my own major, my own path. No expectations about joining your business or living up to some legacy." "Fair enough," Grant smiled. "Though, if you ever want to learn the business, the door's open. No pressure, just opportunity." They finished lunch and Grant paid the bill, waving off Iris's attempt to contribute with gentle insistence that this one was on him. Outside, the car waited to take them back to the penthouse, to the space that had become home during treatment and was slowly transforming into something more permanent. "I'm going to start looking for an apartment," Iris said as they drove. "Something small nearby. I can't live in your guest suite forever, Grant." "Why not?" His question was genuine. "It's sitting empty otherwise. And having you close makes logistics easier." "Because I need my independence," Iris said firmly. "Need to prove to myself I can survive without relying on you. It's important for my recovery, for my sense of self." Grant nodded slowly. "I understand that, but promise me you'll stay until you're fully recovered. Until Dr. Morrison clears you. I couldn't bear it if you pushed yourself too hard trying to prove something and ended up sick again." "I promise," Iris agreed. "Another few months, then I'll start looking." The car pulled up to the building and they rode the elevator to the penthouse in companionable silence. Inside, they dispersed to their usual routines, Grant to his home office to finish work, Iris to her room to rest before physical therapy, Nia to the balcony where she'd spent so many hours processing everything that had happened. She stood at the railing looking out at Manhattan, this city that had witnessed her entire life but that she was seeing with new eyes now. She'd grown up in Queens thinking the towers of Manhattan were as unreachable as the moon, monuments to a world she'd never access. Now she lived in one of those towers, daughter to a man who moved through that world with casual authority. But she hadn't lost herself in the transition. She was still Nia Monroe, still the girl who'd worked double shifts and fought for every dollar. She just had more options now, more resources. A father who loved her, and a mother who'd survived against impossible odds, and a future that held possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, her old coworker from the catering company. "Heard you're a billionaire's daughter now. Fancy. Don't forget us, little people." Nia smiled and typed back, "Never. Coffee next week? My treat." His response came immediately. "Your treat? Damn, you have changed, but yeah, definitely." She pocketed her phone and looked down at her wrist, at the empty space where a tattoo might someday go. She'd been thinking about it lately, about marking this transformation, this moment in her life when everything changed. Not two hearts like her parents had chosen, something different, something that represented who she was becoming rather than who they'd been. Grant found her there an hour later, still lost in contemplation. "Penny for your thoughts?" "Thinking about tattoos," Nia said, "and whether I want one. Something to mark all of this." "What would you get?" Grant asked, genuinely curious. "I don't know yet. Something about resilience, maybe? Or transformation? Something that captures surviving the impossible and coming out stronger." "When you figure it out," Grant said quietly, "I'd like to get one too. A matching one, if you're comfortable with that. A way to mark this chapter, this family we've built." Nia turned to look at him, seeing vulnerability in his expression, this powerful man asking permission to share a symbol with his daughter. "I'd like that," she said. "A lot, actually." They stood together as the sun began setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too vivid to be real. Behind them, through the windows, Iris moved through the penthouse, stronger every day, fighting her way back to health and independence. "Are you happy?" Grant asked suddenly. "With how things turned out? I know it's not what either of us imagined, but—" "I'm happy," Nia interrupted. "It's complicated and messy, and sometimes I'm still angry about the years we lost. But yeah, I'm happy. Are you?" Grant was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I spent 25 years convinced I'd never be happy again, that the best I could hope for was successful and numb. But having you in my life, building this relationship with you, watching your mother fight and survive, it's given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" Nia asked softly. "Hope," Grant said simply. "Hope that maybe the future can be better than the past. That maybe family and connection and love are still possible, even when they seem impossible. You gave me that, Nia. You and your stubborn, complicated, extraordinary mother. You gave me hope." Nia felt tears prickling and blinked them back. "You gave me something too, a father. Resources and opportunities, sure, but more than that. Someone who shows up. Someone who chooses me every day. That's everything." They stood together watching the sunset, father and daughter, no longer strangers but not yet fully comfortable, still learning each other but committed to the process. The city spread out below them, millions of lights beginning to flicker on as darkness fell, millions of lives continuing their private dramas. And in a penthouse overlooking it all, three people who should never have found each other prepared for tomorrow. For physical therapy and business meetings and college applications. For foundation launches and continued recovery and the slow, steady work of building a family from broken pieces. Iris joined them on the balcony, drawn by their voices, and the three of them stood together as night claimed the city. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but together, bound by blood and lies and the choice to keep showing up, to keep trying, to transform a moment at a gala into a lifetime of connection. "Thank you," Iris said quietly, looking between them, "for giving me this, for letting me live long enough to see you build something beautiful." "Thank you for fighting," Grant responded, "for surviving, for giving us the time to figure this out." "Thank you both," Nia added, "for being brave enough to try, for choosing truth over comfort, for showing me what family actually means." They stood in silence as the last light faded from the sky. Three people who'd found each other through impossible odds, through tragedy and lies and a tattoo that had survived 25 years. They'd lost so much time, grieved so many missed moments, but they'd also gained something precious, a second chance at family, at connection, at building something real from ruins. And in the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe being willing to show up, to be honest, to choose each other despite the pain, maybe that was what family had always meant. Not perfection or ease, but commitment. Presence. The courage to love even when love was complicated and messy, and sometimes hurt like hell. The foundation would launch in 3 months. Iris would continue her recovery. Nia would return to college. Grant would keep building his empire, but this time with people to share it with. People who mattered more than any deal or acquisition ever could. They had lost 25 years, but they had the rest of their lives to build something new. And standing together on that balcony, overlooking the city where their paths had finally converged, that future seemed full of possibility. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest and theirs. And sometimes that was the greatest miracle of all.